We are live. Welcome everyone to, I had to double check, day 3. It is Wednesday. Sometimes I keep forgetting that it's not Tuesday. It is day 3 of the Blue Talks Amplify Your Message event. And my co-host today is Susan Binney, which we have all met before on Blue Talks, but I'm glad to see you again. And I'm glad that you and I get to hang out. Can we start just a little bit about who you are, Susan, so that people know where you're coming from and why you ask the questions that you do today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just making sure I'm sharing this on my Facebook page.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
yeah, because it's all about sharing messages. So I empower women, primarily women. I have worked with men, but I primarily empower women to stand in the power of their story and share that
Mm,
story with those who need to hear it, even if it's themselves.
mm,
And I find that if we're not sharing a positive, confident story to ourselves, we're doing ourselves a disservice. So once we tell ourselves a brilliant story, then it's about, doing all those things that we want so that we can have the life that we want and stepping into our business. Hey, Jan, stepping into our business and really sharing that key story that comes from our heart. So that's really who
mm.
I am in a nutshell, just empowering women because I
Yeah.
get empowered when I empower others.
I know you and I talked in the background on the weekend before this event started, and we're like, oh my God, we kind of have similar ways of what we do, but we're slightly different at the same time. So, those of you who have been with me, I'm Laura Lake, and I speak on Courageous Connection, which is part of what Susan does about the stories and finding that power within. But I want to dig deeper. I want to get into the emotion. I want to get into the trauma that you might not talk about. I want to get into those pieces where you're afraid to share. That's my sweet spot, because then I'll tie all of your many stories together with an emotional thread so that everything connects. Ah, so sweet when it connects. But I'm also excited because our first guest, Michele, she's going to come join us here in a minute. We would love to see your comments in the chat this whole time. So let's welcome Michele, and she'll tell us a little bit about her. Hi, Michele.
Hello, how are you today?
Good. Welcome to the stage. Some people say, tell me about yourself. I like to have a more playful question, which is if there were 3 words that you would like somebody else to use to describe you, what might those 3 words be?
Happy,
Okay.
deep, and truth.
Ah, happy, deep, and truth. So why did you choose those words?
Because generally speaking, I'm usually pretty happy and bubbly. So this is just
Yeah.
usually how I come off.
Mm-hmm.
Deep, I am a person who,
Mm,
like, within the first few minutes of meeting me, we're having a conversation about, like, your childhood traumas, where you came from, how you grew up, versus, like, the Blue Jays won last night or whatever it
yeah.
may be, right? It's like
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of conversations around what the weather is today. It's usually like, tell me your deep dark secrets and let's dive into that. Um, and then truth is like I'm gonna call you out if there's something that you need to be called out on, right? And hold you accountable.
Mm.
So
You
yeah.
know what? I love surrounding myself with people like that because as somebody who is deep, you probably feel this too. It's so rare for somebody to meet you at your level or at least close to your level in certain areas. It's like just wow, to feel seen. That's what we
Yep.
all want. Feel seen, heard, and
Yep.
understood. So to feel that is magic.
Well, a lot of it is fear, right? People are so
Yeah.
afraid to be their authentic self and be because they're afraid of how they're going to be, received.
I like this
Hi,
comment. Some of
Lisa.
my favorite people. Thanks, Lisa. So then let's kind of dive straight to the depth and the core of all of this. What is your message? What is it that you're trying to share with the world?
Okay, so what I do is I'm an intuitive holistic healer. I'm also a self growth guide, coach, and teacher. So, what is my message? My message is to be your authentic self, right? Show up fully who you are and don't be afraid of that. And so many people are afraid of success, right? That they keep themselves small and they let their egos get loud and they don't share who they are and what they're meant to do in this world or this lifetime, right? So, I really encourage my people and that's my message to the people, is be your authentic self. Don't be afraid to step out. That's literally your purpose and why you're here, and share that with the world, because that's what you're meant to do, right? It's just finding the people and aligning with the people that you're meant to serve or be part of their world in this lifetime.
When I've been thinking about comfort zone lately, I picture videos and pictures in my mind. So I'm imagining this group of people where you draw like this circle with a stick in the sand and say, stay in the circle. How long do you think those people are going to stay in the circle before somebody steps out? And then once somebody steps out, people are like, wait, we're allowed to step out of the circle. Maybe they draw a bigger circle. Maybe they draw a circle beside it. Like, somebody has to get it started.
Yeah,
And
it only
why
takes
not
one
us?
person. Yep.
Why not us? I love that. There's always a story behind it. So do tell, share us the story.
Share the story. Oh my goodness, where do
Share
I
the
start?
story.
And I want
We're
to go.
five.
I want to go deep. Okay.
I know.
Because you said one of your words is deep, and I want the truth, and I want to go deep, and I know we're going to be happy about this. Why do you do what you do?
Okay.
Oh, it's
so
coming.
It's a
coming.
bit of a story. So hold on. Here we go. Okay. So a few years ago, I found myself as a divorced single mother, going through separation, coming out of. I had another relationship after I was going through my separation that was pretty toxic, and I found myself in a situation where I kept living very similar cycles. I found myself in the position where I'm now a single mom with 2 kids, a mortgage, all the things. And I was like lucky to make $800 a month at the current job that I was working at. And so a lot of things came crashing down on me and around me in a very short period of time. And it was very much a situation of, okay, this is going to kick my butt, or this is time to stand up and do something about it. Right. So I had to start holding myself accountable, and I had to start seeing why these cycles kept showing up in my life and what was going on. So I went back to school and got my career that I was already trained in back on track. But so I also am a full-time paramedic as well as doing my own business. Yeah. So, but I had been out of it because I was a stay-at-home mom at that point in time for so long, that so many, because anything medical changes and it's always
so
evolving. So I had been out of it for so long that I could not get a job back in my field because too many things had changed. So I ended up having to go back to school, redoing school all over again, and then got my career back on track, and everything was great until I started doing the career for a couple of years and ended up finding out that even though it was something that I had wanted for so long, I wasn't happy. And I couldn't figure out why I wasn't happy. It was like my divorce was going through, that was all being finalized. I had bought my own home. I had the career that I wanted. I was, getting all of the toys. Yeah, exactly. Like, I had the camper, I had the snowmobile, I had and it was like, I literally was ticking off all of these boxes of things that I thought I had wanted. And I just, for the life of me, felt numb, and I couldn't figure out why. So I actually started going to therapists and trying to figure out and get to the bottom of why it wasn't, like, why I didn't happy, because all of these things that I thought I wanted were coming to fruition for me, and it just wasn't making sense. So they ended up actually chasing the diagnosis of PTSD. So I was going through like months of therapy, and it just, nothing was working. So I started doing the tests, and I started, you have to kind of monitor your sleep and your mood and how easy you startle and what you eat and all of those things, right? And so my therapist finally gets the results, and she comes back to me and she goes, it's highly likely you have PTSD. And so now here I am 2 years later, after I've gone through all of this work, gone back to school, got my career back on track, and I'm like, well, if I can't do my job as a medic, how the heck am I going to support these children now? Right? Like, now what am I going to do? Right? So it was at this point in time, I was like, something's got to give here, because I love my job. It doesn't make sense to me that this is my job that's causing this, because I wasn't having, like, I mean, any emergency first responder career is high up there for a PTSD diagnosis, naturally. Like, that's just the way it is. But I wasn't having what you would commonly think as like replaying calls that I had been to, or having night terrors about calls that I had been to, or things like that, where it was like, yeah, this is absolutely PTSD. I just felt numb and I didn't know why. So my therapist was actually getting to the point where it was like, we might have to go the route of medication because none of these things are working for you right now. And obviously something's got to give eventually, right? And so I was like, okay, and I was contemplating it, but I had been on medication in the past and I just really did not love the side effects. So I started looking for alternative options or resources, which is what led me down. I'd always had spirituality in the past, but not to the depth that I'm in now, right? And so I ended up finding an intuitive healer who I started working with. And within a week of working with this person and understanding some things, I had shifts happening. I started sleeping better. I started feeling better. I started feeling alive again and not so numb and actually feeling things. And what it ended up being for me, I mean, PTSD is absolutely a thing and absolutely needs treatment. But for me, what it ended up being is I was so intuitive and I'm so empathic as a human that working in the field that I work in, especially I was on a straight night shift at that point in time. So I was working with a lot of, domestic disputes, suicidal ideation, overdoses, that sort of stuff that, commonly comes during the evening hours. And I was taking that energy home with me. So it wasn't so much that I was mentally impacted by what it was that I was seeing. It was just the presence of that energy.
Yeah.
Right. So once I learned that, and once I learned how to cut energetic cords and how to shift energies around me and how to be mindful of my energetic environment and started putting those into practice, it was like night and day difference. And I really started to be able to, get the happy back in my life and, start feeling the things and actually show up and be present for my children. And so I'm a busy person. I have my own business. I work full time as a medic and I'm a single mom of 2 children, but over the course of the last couple of years, figured out a way to make all of that work in my life so I can show up for my kids, I can show up for myself, I can show up for my business, I can show up for, being a medic when I need to show up and do that. And I'm happy and I'm fulfilled and I'm financially successful and all of the things, right? So now
Yeah.
I encourage and empower other people to do the same thing by teaching the tools that I was taught to better.
Ooh, okay. I want to reframe parts of it just for a moment to help listeners as well as other entrepreneurs identify and really relate to what this means. So I also have had PTSD. They've rephrased it to PTSR. So PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, and they changed it to post-traumatic stress response because it is a natural way that our body does deal with stress. And the way that I explain it is there's a capacity for stress that we can deal with in the moment. Anything beyond that in the moment is an overflow. That overflow causes this different type of response, which is where our body goes into different types of PTSD or PTSR. You had more of a chronic version of PTSR, whereas mine was situation based, so acute PTSR. So there's a complete difference in symptoms too, which is something people don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
They think it's the nightmares. They think it's, the overplaying and the irritation and the triggers everywhere. It's not necessarily. And the big problem that I've been seeing is entrepreneurs, as well as service providers, suffer from mental health issues more than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy. So to have this conversation is very important. And I'm glad that you brought it up because I want us to be mindful. Just because we're not having flashbacks doesn't mean that we're not suffering. So
Absolutely.
to pay attention. Yeah. So then you were talking about authenticity. You were talking about being in your power. And you also showed us moments where you weren't in your power. You were just numb. Can you lean into just that moment of numbness and give us some sort of insight into what that looked and felt like in your daily habit of life?
So I was literally just going through the motions, like day in and day out, just following the motions. The day that was the turning point for me, and I spoke to this when I spoke at UCLA back in February. I was driving home from a night shift, and I remember I was by myself. I was in the car driving home after a night shift, and I glanced down at my speedometer and I was doing 70 kilometers over the speed limit. And I was completely unaware of the fact that I was driving 70 kilometers over the speed limit, like completely numb. And so once I recognized that that's what I was doing, I had a thought in my brain that was like, it's probably too fast. And I still had zero regard for my safety, my safety,
Yeah.
anyone else's around me, situational awareness, nothing. It was gone. Like it was numb. I was actually numb. And it was, in that moment, I had a voice in my head that said, Michele, you're a mother of 2 children. Like, you need to be here for them. And then that was the moment that everything clicked for me. And it was like, you need help. Something needs to shift. This isn't okay. And you need to deal with this. And then that's obviously that literally in that moment, that's when everything started to shift. And it was like, okay, I need to do better and I need to show up better and I need to address this because I'm not okay.
I so appreciate you sharing that moment, because in our world, like, those types of moments are the moments that we like to skip over, because we're like, we don't want to feel the feelings in that moment. We'll just say, this is what happened. Oop, this is how things started. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah,
I
I
see
wanted to
you.
say in that moment when you were recognizing, and that's so huge, right? That intuitive part of you kicked in and you recognized this isn't okay anymore. I need to do something, right? And so many people with PTSR just don't. They can't bounce back. They can't get out of that, right? My husband has PTSD, and I live with that every day from being in the military. And I ask him, how are you feeling, and what are you thinking? And he's just not, right. He's just not totally there. And so I've been doing a lot of that thinking and that intuitive stuff for him. But great for you for recognizing that. And then not only recognizing it, doing something about it, and then helping others. Like, that's got to be so rewarding.
Well, between both my career as EMS and doing this myself and learning through it, right? I just saw such a need. There's so many people in this world that don't financially have the resources or, don't have benefits to even get to therapy or have anybody to even have those conversations, right? So it's like, just get the message out there, start talking about the things so that people know they're not alone and that people know that there is help and there are tools and there are resources. And yes, people absolutely need therapy and need medication, and I'm not downplaying that, but there are also other resources that people can get to or have access to that can help temporarily while they're trying to go through the things.
Exactly. Oh, when I was going through my first PTSD, more than one, I tried over 50 different modalities. And I'm not saying that none of them worked, but what I am saying is they all worked a little bit for what I was ready for in that particular moment. And when I would go back to some of those modalities, I could learn a little more. I could lean in a little bit deeper. I could see how other things were connected with this one and just build on it. So I want to know some of the things that you did to help you get out and how those relate to the work that you do now.
Okay, so the first thing, the biggest thing was understanding energy and energetic environments, right? And that literally everything holds an energy. So what you expose yourself to is going to be what you become, right? It's just that law of attraction, right? So if you're constantly allowing yourself to be in an environment that's toxic and negative and you're not refilling your bucket or grounding yourself or taking that time to be mindful, you're going to start living, eating, breathing that in energetic environment, right? So this is why we talk about mindfulness and we talk about grounding, we talk about self-care and how monumental it is and how self-care is not selfish. I know so many mothers out there, and so many of my clients are mothers who are either married and their partner works a lot because they have their own business, but a lot of the parenting falls on them, which is such a common thing. And they think it's so selfish to buy themselves that nice thing or to, take a night off for themselves. And it's like, no, it's a necessity. Like, we absolutely have to do those things to refill our bucket so that we can show up in a way that we're meant to show up for our family, for our people, for our work, whatever it is that we have to do, right? So creating that sacred, safe, energetic environment for you to be in so that you can really live, breathe, and feel that and project that into the world, right? As opposed
Mm.
to negativity, depression, things that are of lower energies, right? So that would, I would say, is like the first biggest shift that anybody can make, is just understanding your energetic environment and what you're surrounding yourself in. This is right down to like what you're watching on TikTok, what you're
Oh
watching
yeah.
on Instagram, what, like the news. Everybody knows that the
Ugh.
news is nothing but negative. So if you're surrounding yourself in that all of the time, that's going to be what you start to project into the world, right? And that's going to be what you
Yeah.
carry with you. So understanding your energetic environment is huge and massive, and absolutely the number one thing that I say to my clients that you need to start having a situational awareness around.
Mm.
So that's number one. Two are different divination tools is what I use a lot with my clients. So whether it be pendulum work, whether it be dowsing rods, whether it be oracle cards or tarot cards, I'm an intuitive, so I have ability to channel. So that's what I do with a lot of my clients is, you know, I'll sit down and I'll read the energy before we even get on the call, channel a bunch of things, and then we'll dive into it when we start talking about it, right?
Yeah.
So those are the big shifts and tools that I teach my clients how to use. I will actually pull cards with them and I will talk about it and we'll go through it. And then I teach them how to use the cards themselves, so that if I'm not available or somebody else is not available or they don't have the finances to continue to keep working with me, but it's something that they need, then they can do it themselves and have access to that themselves.
I really like that with the oracle cards where you're or tarot, whatever you're using, um, being able to teach them how to do it so that they can do it on their own. Do you have your own deck? Do you sell one?
I'm building one. I actually have one that's halfway developed right now, so it's in the
Me
process.
too.
Yes.
Did you
Love that.
start developing it during COVID?
No, I just actually in the last couple of weeks have
Oh,
just
oh,
started. Yeah,
nice.
I've had the idea for a long time, but I've been trying to
Mhm.
figure out the theme of the first one that I want to launch. So,
Ooh,
yeah.
I
Yeah.
like
So the
that.
first one, it's a lot to do with ego and mindfulness and retreat and that, like that kind of stuff, right?
Mm.
So,
I've been thinking about creating a deck of awareness questions with different themes. Because I always use awareness questions with myself. I use it in my mindfulness practice, in my coaching practice, like everywhere I go. And the types of questions that I even ask in interviews, like the whole 3 words to describe yourself, they are more of self awareness blended with other things. So it's just, I think it would be really fun to have
yeah,
like this
absolutely.
physical thing for our clients. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yes.
So let's talk about some of your favorite ways to share this message then. So
Oh,
do you
okay.
speak? Do you write? Like, what do you do?
So I really just started to put myself out there more in the last year. So
Ooh,
I did go,
congratulations.
thank you. I did go to UCLA in February and I did speak at UCLA as part of Blue Talks. I also have submitted my submission for a Blue Talks book. So I believe I'm coming out in the
Mm.
next Blue Talks book. I think it's, what is it, 9? I think it's volume 9, maybe, that they're
Yeah, I
coming out
have
with
8 right
next.
here. This is
Yeah.
8 for
Yeah. So I
those.
think,
And look, you get to be one of these people.
yes, very
That's
soon.
amazing.
Yeah, so I believe I'm in the next one in Blue
Nice.
Talks 9. So, and my chapter is called Shift. So, it's all
Ooh.
about shifting mindset. So, and having an awareness outside of just yourself and your ego thinking, right? So,
Mm.
yeah, so I do that, and then of course I'm, on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all the things, and I'm in the process right now of building and developing courses so that ideally I can launch an app for people to have access to all of the things that I
Oh,
ideally, that's down the road. It's not like going to happen
yeah.
tomorrow. It's in the process, and I'm hoping to launch a podcast in the near future too. So I'm working on the topics for that, and I have a co-host that's going to help me out with that. And so we're just tying up the final things around that, and that will be launched hopefully sooner than later as well.
Do you mind me asking who your co-host is?
My sister,
Aw, that's so
yeah,
sweet.
yeah.
So then
So
she has that experience of going through some of that story with you then.
well, I mean, we grew up together, so we have a lot of
Yeah.
the same background, right? Growing up
Yeah.
together. But it was interesting because my sister and I actually were not that close. I mean, we didn't hate each other. We're sisters, but we weren't actually that close until the last couple of years when I started actually going through this stuff. And we really
Yes.
connected because I had no idea that she was into spirituality and that she used holistic healing and that she had been doing her own therapy. And it wasn't until I kind of came out and said, hey, this is what I have going on and this is, you know, what I'm doing, that we really reconnected and, you know, talk almost every day now and all of the things. So yeah, so she's been one of my greatest supporters as well in all of this. So
Aww.
it's time to co-collaborate and do the things together.
So you stepped out of that sand circle.
Yeah.
And look, there was people there you didn't know.
Yeah.
That's great.
And you've got such a strong presence about you too. I want to recognize that because I was at UCLA with you, and I got to tell you, that minute that you walked on the stage was just, you know, if someone wasn't paying attention, it was pay attention. Like Michele is speaking. Like you have such a command of that, and even in your space, and you know, there's something about the energy of you. I don't know if people have noticed. I've noticed as we've been going, my camera is clearing up, my lighting is getting brighter, and it has nothing to do with the room or the sun or anything changing, because there's no natural light that is allowed to come in right now. So I'm gonna say it's because I'm in your presence, and you know, sharing that message. And we were talking a little bit about this earlier. You know, how else do you share your message? How innovative do you share your message? And the energy of you is just sharing that message of like wellness and greatness. And so I just want to recognize that, because I think that anywhere you go, I mean, I try everywhere I go to be very positive and very, you know, even if I'm not telling a story or I'm not going into the work that I do, I tend to try and like uplift people wherever I am, right? And help them release something that they're blocking. But it's usually in their presence physically. And you're doing that. You're doing it. I don't know if you guys out there are feeling this, but Michele is doing that just by being who she is. Like, look at that smile. You smile and the whole room, the whole universe lights up. So yeah.
Thank you.
So do you find that when you're out and about that you have that radiance that naturally flows from you, or do you even recognize that?
So I didn't for the longest time, actually. Thank you very much. Those were very kind words. But I didn't for the longest time. I had no idea that that's what I put out into the world. And I think it was one of my best friends that I grew up with. We had to write like a little blurb about their friend or whoever. What was it that they recognized about this person? And it wasn't until she wrote that she's always smiling, no matter what. Right. And it was like, and it's so funny because as going through this the last couple of years, I go back and I look at pictures and I can see the difference in the energy. So yes, I was always smiling. Yes, I always I'm smiling in almost every single picture that you ever see of me, but you can see the energy difference that you're speaking about, right? You can see like just a different aura around where I'm at now versus where I was a few years ago. So do I think I've always had a bit of that? Yes. Do I think it's, you know, where I am now? No. But I would say that it's something that I've definitely carried with me, but I didn't always recognize it. And it wasn't until someone pointed out, like, you know, it doesn't matter what's going on in her world. She's always got a smile on her face. And it's like, well, you have to, right? You have to. Otherwise, you're just going to sit in your couch and be a couch potato. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do. But I personally don't want to do that. I don't want to be that person. And I always want to grow and I always want to change. And I always want to try and have those depth conversations with people. Like when I go to work, I have 12 hours with my coworker, right? And we're in a very close community. So it's just the two of us, unless we're on a call doing something. And I have, you know, part that come to work and it's like, okay, what kind of conversation are we going to get into tonight? What am I going to learn tonight? Because we get into these deep, wholehearted conversations that they wouldn't have with other people. And I've just really connected with a lot of my coworkers on such a deep level. And I love that. And I appreciate that. And I would not change that for the world. Right. But it's just, yeah, being able to have that presence and hold that space for them and to get into those conversations. Right.
Yeah. So then the question that we said behind the scenes was, what would be a crazy cool way to share this message with your audience?
And of course, you can't make this up.
So it doesn't have to be realistic. No realistic.
Literally, what went through my brain when you asked me that was just being my authentic self. That's all it is, right? That's all you have to do is literally be your authentic self, right? And just show up as yourself, and you're gonna spread your message. You're gonna spread who you are. You're gonna spread your energy. You're gonna share it, right? That's just how it is. So yeah, that's so funny that we ended up in this circle where Susan, you bring it up. And then of course that's the question. And that was my answer. So you can't make this shit up.
No, no.
No, and I see you actually. I always wanted to be that person that would go out and dance in the streets and be that happy, smiling person and just sharing
Mhm.
that message of empowerment, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know, but I think now that I've said it and now that I'm in the presence of Laura, she's gonna make me go out and do it in the street. She's probably gonna do it with me somewhere in the streets, but
Probably.
Yeah.
and it's so interesting when you talk about the smiling, right? Because I'm a happy person and I try to smile all the time, but I've always got that serious, like inquisitive face, right?
Right.
And I remember once I was on a stage and I had the opportunity to speak on an international stage and I was part of a panel and the host said to me, "Susan, are you not happy?" And I'm like, "Of course I'm happy. Why?" "Well, you're not smiling." And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm observing
Oh.
and I'm right. So I've been trying more and more, but it's not easy if it doesn't come naturally, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and we all have those moments where we get into deep thought, right? So when we're thinking about things, it's like our face shows what we're thinking and not how we're actually presenting. So I've had that too, where people are like, "Are you angry?" It's like, "What? No. What's wrong? Like, what do you mean? Am I angry?" Right? And it's just you're just so deep in thought, and that's okay too, right?
Yeah.
All you
My
have to do
daughter
is
will.
ask the question.
Yeah. And to be who you are, wherever you
Yep.
are, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
My daughter will see me gaming or working on something, and I'm thinking, and I'm trying to like, and like my mouth. Usually, I'm smiling all the time, but I'm staring at the screen, and my face is flat, and my mouth is open, and she's like, "Your mouth breathing again." I was like, "That's because I'm thinking, and it comes through my mouth." It's all good.
It's all
So
about flow.
Michele, well, I need the extra oxygen. Sometimes when I'm thinking, I don't breathe.
Oh, okay.
I go into that meditative state, and that's one of the things that scared me about meditation or mindfulness not when I first started, but when I got deeper into it, was that I noticed that I stopped breathing for like a whole minute. And then I'm like, trying to gasp and breathe it in. And then my heart rate would increase. I'm like, no, just chill. I was fine until I noticed.
Yeah.
Have you had any experience with mindfulness and meditation? Because there's a lot of misconceptions there. So I want to speak upon it for a moment.
So that like the difference between mindfulness and meditation?
Well,
Is that what?
what's your experience with it? We'll start there.
Okay, so mindfulness to me would be kind of meeting people where they're at and having an understanding and awareness around, that's maybe all that person can consciously comprehend at this moment versus, instead and being mindful of the fact that there are so many different perceptions and realities and differences in this world that my line of thinking and where I'm at might be totally different than Susan's, might be totally different than Laura's, right? Just because of what I've experienced and what I've gone through. Pardon me. So having the mindfulness of there is more, greater, bigger, different things out there and around you, and that's okay, right? But being open as well to receive that and learn and be inquisitive about that so that you can expand your mind, your knowledge, your awareness around the different things. So to me, that would be mindfulness. Meditation to me is finding your calm, finding your inner peace, connecting with yourself and your higher knowing, and really getting those deeper, higher intuitive hits and messages to help you on your path and your journey.
I love that. Do you have any favorite practices?
I mean, I'm so in flow and so in alignment now. It's just like I just do the things all the time, all day long, and that's great, and it's beautiful and it's lovely.
Nice.
But prior to that, I had to carve out what I called white space time blocking.
Ooh.
So what I teach this to a lot of my clients is white space time blocking is a period in time. So I will look at my week, and if I say, okay, Thursday morning, I don't have any clients, I'm not doing EMS, I don't have my kids because they're at school, and I'm going to have, 2 hours when I wake up in the morning where it's like I don't have anything clocked to do in that space and time. I will white space time block that. So that is my moment in time where I do whatever I intuitively feel like doing at that time. So that means if a friend calls and schedules me for lunch, or if a doctor's appointment comes up or whatever, no, that's my white space time blocked, unless it's obviously an emergency and you have to deal with that. That's my me time, right? So that I can do whatever my body is telling me I need to do in that moment in time. So if I need to have a nap, I have a nap. If I need to get the laundry done, and that's what I genuinely feel like doing at that point in time, I'll get the laundry done. Whatever it is, like whatever my body is telling me I need to do in that moment, I listen to it, and then that's what I do. And so that's like a self-care practice that really became so important for me, to be able to allow the space for the meditation and the mindfulness and the higher knowing and all of those hits to start coming in. Is you have to create the space in order to be able to do that. So white space time blocking is something I usually coach all of my clients on, to do that. And so that they're mindfully creating that space for them to do and learn and practice the things.
I like all of that. I've had so many people, because I talk about mindfulness as well, but I've had so many people say mindfulness doesn't work for me. Meditation doesn't work for me. It takes too long. I can't sit in a chair. And I'm like, wait. Mindfulness is just paying attention to your thoughts. And meditation is about awareness. And you can have extra goals and stuff on top of that, but it's simple. And most of the time when people are practicing mindfulness and they're thinking, but I'm thinking about thoughts again. I'm supposed to get rid of the thoughts. No, that's the whole practice of mindfulness. You're doing it right. It's all good. So I keep showing them that like everything that you do can be a mindfulness practice. You want to drink your coffee mindfully? Go ahead. You want to go for a walk mindfully? Go ahead. You want to write something, read something, pick up something, touch something, smell, I'm assuming incense, which is on your desk. Is that what that is? Right? Yeah. You can do that mindfully too. And it can be so simple.
Yeah. And I think it's important to highlight the fact that it's a practice, right? Yes. So it literally takes practice. Like I could not go jump in an ambulance tomorrow without the proper training and practice and, muscle memory to go do that job without practicing it, without going through the school, without educating myself on it, right? I could not go do those things or I would lose my job, and it probably wouldn't be a positive outcome, right? You have to practice meditation. You have to practice mindfulness. You have to practice and learn everything about whatever it is you're doing. So you don't just say, oh, it doesn't work for me. And I was absolutely one of those people. I at one point in time was like, meditation, that's not going to work for me. I'm not going to sit there and go kumbaya. But it's because I didn't have the awareness or the knowledge around how to properly meditate or what it was. And that it was, I had this mindset that it was, let's shut off our brain. Let's not have the thoughts. And I'm like, oh, I'm a massive overthinker. I can't do that. Versus allowing myself the calm space to have those thoughts and feel into those thoughts and listen to my higher knowing about those thoughts. And, how are we going to resolve this, right? And really dive deep into those things that I needed to dive into. It was creating the space to do that, right? And I originally just thought it was kumbaya, and we all sit there and we try not to have, any negative thoughts and just shut our brain off. And I was like, there's no way I can do that. So I absolutely was one of those people for a long time. And now it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much more to it. And that's another thing that I coach my clients on is that, no, it's not kumbaya. We're all going to sit in a circle and hum and pretend life is grand. Like, no, it's allowing the space to feel into the things that you need to feel into in a mindful, positive way.
I love that. Go ahead.
Sorry. I love the fact that not only did you create that space, but you've named it for yourself. Right? You've named it white space time blocking. And now so many other people are going to be, oh, I'm white space time blocking. I know I'm going to do that because I do block time for myself, but it's not special. It doesn't seem special, right? It's lost that special. So for me to say, oh, today I'm going to white space time block and I'm going to do it for me. All of a sudden that special creativity has come back. So I love that you've done that. And I imagine you've got quite a following of people that now do that for themselves as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think every single person I've ever worked one-on-one with, does that now as a self-care practice for themselves. So this means no TikTok, no Instagram, no, what does my body need? What does my energy need? What does my mind need? Is my mind so upset and worried about this laundry that I have to get it done? Right? Because for some people, that's a real thing. Like I have one
Yep.
client that's, super type A personality about their house, and that's okay. But if it's in any disarray, their mind is as well. Right? So it's like, okay, so create that. That's your time that that's going to be done no matter what. Right? And it can be as simple as that for that person. It can look totally like, for me, it's, no TikTok, no Instagram, no whatever, resting my body, grounding myself, and getting into my heart. Like whatever that looks like for you is what you need to do. Right.
Mm. And one of my favorite ways is I love to sing power vocals. Like I was listening to Adele earlier and I was like, and Laureen when Susan came on, they're very powerful singers, but it helps to stimulate the vagus nerve, which helps to shut off my stress response. I start there so that when I am out for my walk, I can take off my headphones. I can close my eyes. I can finally allow myself to not have the 20,000 thoughts, but maybe like 5,000 at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So that I can just breathe, be in the moment. And when I open my eyes, the world is like the Matrix slow-mo and everything sparkles with creativity and beauty. It's like the world is magical again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can put my headphones back on and continue on my day. But like everybody's, as you said, looks different. To just lean into what that looks like for you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it helps you have the awareness and to step back from whatever this is that's in your face, right? And you're just like, I need to see it here because I can't see it here. If I'm here, now I have a choice of how to respond instead of just react that's in my face. Mm-hmm. So I love that.
Once you've had the time to process it and really dive into that and look at it, well, guess who's now showing up better for everything else in her life when they have to go back to it, right?
So good.
Because you've now created space.
Yeah. Do you do that at the 9 to 5 job too? Like, do you do that at your 9 to 5 job as well? Or your 12-hour, like when you're out?
So I have to. It's like, so I do a daily practice where at least if it's a 12-hour shift, so my 12-hour shifts end up being 14, 16-hour days, no problem. By the time I get up, get ready for work, get to work, all the things. And then of course you never necessarily get off on time, but I have 2 meditations that I do every single day. And I was taught by my coach where every single morning I'm creating sacred space around me. I'm calling in only love and light around me. I'm asking that I only leave love and light in my wake. I'm doing things like that where, it only takes a few minutes every morning before I even get out of bed, before I talk to anybody, before I talk to my kids. My kids now do the same thing. Where I create sacred space around me to help me throughout my day and set my energy up for a good fresh start to every single day. No, it doesn't matter what yesterday brought. It doesn't matter what tomorrow is going to bring. It's today is today, and today is love and light, and I'm only leaving love and light in my wake. That's what I do every single morning. And every night before I go to bed, I kind of just revisit the day, send any energy back to where it came from, that I held space for throughout the day, and bring any of my energy back to me, all with love and light, so that I can kind of clear and wash the day away from me, so that I can have the restful sleep that I need to get up and do it again the next day.
Yeah, that's nice. Brilliant. And I think that's so important for anyone out there that's listening. I think that's so important. Michelle's got 12-hour, 14-hour, 16-hour days, but she's not saying, I don't have time for this, right? That's something that a lot of my clients are like, I don't have time to stand in the power of the story that I'm telling myself on a daily. It's like, why not? Why aren't you creating that time? And it's about...
So my question to them would be like, why is this making you uncomfortable?
Exactly.
Right? Why does this make, what do you need? What do I need to teach you or give you or support you in so that you have the knowledge on how to do that? Because it literally takes me a couple minutes every morning and a couple minutes every night. And if you can't find, you're going to continue. Oh,
you're good. Go ahead.
You're going to continue to just live in the same pattern. So if you want something to change, you have to make the changes, right? So yeah.
Yeah,
nice.
Exactly. So that was just so much energy. You cut yourself off because there was like so much energy going. I felt that, right?
So that's something I actually do, and it's so funny because like I mess with technology all the time, and the way that my guides have explained it to me is like, higher, more important, not important, but like higher knowing messages cause technology glitches. And the way that they show this to me is like, you know how kids' toys will like randomly go off in the middle of the night or like make
Oh,
noises or whatever.
yes.
And it's like a higher frequency or a higher vibe interfering with them, or spirit, or whichever you believe in, right? And so it's like high vibe beings have the ability to mess with technology because they're a higher frequency, a different wavelength, right? So it's the same kind of system. So
Okay,
it's something that I actually do all the time.
this has been really lovely, but we only have about 30 seconds. So will you tell us, how do we find you?
At Michele Wilson Intuitive. That takes you to my Instagram, my Facebook, my TikTok, all the things in there. There's the links for my website and my email and all that. So you can contact me there.
Awesome. Any couple words before we leave?
Have a beautiful day.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Michele. This
No
was
problem.
great and
Thank
right
you.
on time, and I love it. So
Take
thanks.
care.
See
Have a
you
great day.
again.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye. And our next guest is behind the scenes. I'm loving today because everybody's ready. Just give me a thumbs up if you're ready to come on the screen and we'll bring you up. Awesome. Welcome to the screen, Larry. I'm loving that painting in the back.
I can.
That's beautiful. Okay, so we have been having some fun with our opening questions. We're not going to ask you, tell us a little bit about you, because that's kind of generic and it kind of has lost some fun. What I've been asking people is, what 3 words would you love other people to use to describe you? So we'll start there. Yeah.
Somewhat intuitive. The other one is always, that's more than that, looking to improve your speaking. How you can overcome the fear of public speaking and release the knowledge that you have. This is one of the great tragedies of our time, that people are so smart, but they're inhibited at speaking to a group. And this goes back 26 centuries. The first time that I'm aware of it was that Pericles, a great orator and leader in ancient Greece, said, "Those who have knowledge but cannot express this knowledge place themselves at the level of those who have no knowledge." And I see that over and over in workshops that I do. Very bright IT people, engineers,
Yeah.
get up in front of an audience and they freeze. They're
Oh, yes.
inhibited.
Yep.
Well, that's a lot more than 3 words, I know.
So what I'm getting so far is you're somewhat intuitive, you're a speaker trainer, and Pericles.
Okay.
I'll just sum it up.
Guide. Listen
He'd
to
be the guide.
Pericles and then work against that particular drive.
Yeah. I've been looking into past references about storytelling and how it started and different gods from different cultures. And I came across one called Saga, which is related to the idea of Pericles, but there's not a whole lot of information about her. All I've learned so far is that she would get Odin to drink from this golden cup, and they would have conversations to help him relay information and to talk to other people. So can you tell us a little bit about Pericles and why he's important for you?
Well, one of the things is he lived about 60 years before Aristotle, and that's the name that we generally identify with public speaking.
Yeah.
Aristotle and Plato, who were somewhat opposites. Plato was the teacher, Aristotle was the student, and then as Aristotle matured, he became somewhat different in opinion than Plato. Plato was more theoretician, Aristotle was more realistic. And then I look back at Pericles 60, 70 years before that, and he was very practical to come out with that statement. Hey, if you've got a lot of knowledge in your mind and you can't express it, then you're no better than the person who has no knowledge. And I see that today in virtually every workshop I do. Very, very bright people. I'm amazed at what IT people can do. I am not in any way IT. I mean, email is about as far as I would go in that. Yet when they stand up and I try to have them express what it is, and it's very important for many of them because the government now has a requirement that when they're offering a contract, the proposal is being responded to, they don't want to talk to a salesperson. They don't want to talk
Oh,
to a marketer nor a public speaker like me. They want to talk to the people who are going to carry out the contract. And can
yep.
they explain why their company is best suited to solve the problem of the government? And that is an area that it provides a market for me. That's good. But I find
Yep.
it so almost a shame that these people who have devoted so much time to learning something cannot share that with others in a meaningful way, that the proposal listeners will say, this is a company for us. We can work with this guy. We can work with these people. And that's one of the areas that I've devoted much of my training in public speaking since I retired from the Army, and to try and be able to get them to be able to speak forcefully and
Yep.
persuasively.
Oh, yes. And I find that there's a big disconnect in communication between architects and engineers. I took engineering and then I went and took architecture and drafting, and I worked in an office that had both. So, for those who aren't familiar, engineers tend to be more the logical, technical side, and architecture tends to be more of the creative side. So, the way that they communicate is completely different.
Well, that's why I've always admired architects, because of the fact that they do require engineering to do it. But they create buildings. I'm looking out the
Yeah.
window now of my home in Bethesda, Maryland, and that's the headquarters of Marriott Hotel, and they have a beautiful
Oh,
building. And I keep wondering, how did they build something like that so tall and it didn't fall down? Well, the engineers are the ones that put that together. It was the architects that gave the vision for it. But
yes.
it's a great thing you brought up there, the relationship between the
Yep.
two, because the architect has to be a bit of an engineer, and the engineer probably doesn't want to have anything to do with the architect. He just wants to follow the blueprint and build the
Oh,
building.
there was there was a lot of how should I word this, mediation that I did. See, I'm not super technical and I'm not super creative. I'm in the middle. My genius zone is finding patterns. So I used to go and talk to the engineers and go, what are your concerns? Because the architects just aren't getting it. And then I would go to the architect and I would ask them, what is your vision? What is it that you're trying to make this building do and feel like? So that I could communicate to the other person exactly what the base needs were and what we could shift on, we could be adaptable with. And then they knew what was non-negotiable, just like in our own lives, in our own business, and our own storytelling. There are non-negotiables. But then there's that other layer of how can we play with that? How can we flex? How can we understand where the other person is coming from and help include them in that conversation? So is that what your storytelling is like?
That is the problem, and the little bit that I've had some contact with architects and a lot with engineers, both
Mm.
of which I admire because they are not my
Oh,
skill
yes.
sets in any way. But I find the architects that I've met, because of their creativity, are a little more adaptable.
Yes.
Sometimes the engineers are saying no, and that's because they're looking at safety as well. Yeah, that would be
Yes.
beautiful, but it may not stand up for very long. I
Yeah.
think we're looking at this at this very moment, where we're looking at the submersible that is missing
Yes.
people. They are up there now. I'm hearing more and more on the news that they have ignored some of the safety concerns. One man
Oh,
said he was fired after he brought up certain elements that could be safe or dangerous for those when it hit the engine floor. He was fired. Ah, that I look at this and I say, now another group that I deal with, and lawyers. Lawyers are now looking at, boy, some really big suits that are going to go. But the president of the company is one of those that's on there. That must have imbued a lot of confidence in the people that were getting in, saying, well, hey, if the president's on board this device, it's got to be safe. Well, president was probably one that fired the fellow who brought up the safety concerns. So this is
yeah.
we all hope that they are able to get them out, but 13,000 feet down, they're looking at the submersible now as if it was an enemy submarine. They're getting pings. They get that from the planes that are
Oh,
flying over, the
yeah.
anti-submarine planes. But are they going
Mhm.
to get it? Apparently, there is no way to have developed a radio where they could call up to the surface and say, hey, we're in trouble. this is our location as far as we can tell. They may never find it as well. All this that's hacking, and I also look at it as a bit selfish on their part. They did this for some sort of an adventure, but look at how much money is being spent by governments all over the world to try and find them. I think that's a bit irresponsible that they did that, but they are thrill seekers as well. So that's getting a little bit off track of what we talk about.
I was like, how can we tie this into the work that you do?
The minds together to be able to do it, for the engineer in the building looking at it saying, yeah, well, I have to make this as safe as possible. But I also have to look at it and say, I'm proud that I developed that building. It's so beautiful. And how do you bring that together? That's what you would have had to do as a
Yeah.
between the two, because they are. I just have the great admiration for architects, because they must be engineers at heart, in addition to being artists, because they have to look at how they're developing that. And
The good ones do, yeah.
and the engineer is just get me all the specifics, and I'll look at the stress and the strain. And there's an element in what I do in teaching speaking. I also look at it from a standpoint that it's like building a bridge. You're building a bridge between the mind of the speaker and the mind of the audience. And with building a bridge, you have to know what the prevailing winds are, the stress and the strain, and all of that. That becomes who are the troublemakers in the audience, and all those. So there's a little bit of engineering, analytical work to be done when you're doing training and speaking.
Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting how you were like, oh, we're kind of off track, not sure how we're going to get back. You brilliantly brought that right back, building the bridge. And I think, what I was hearing you say is that in everything we do, regardless of who we are and what we do, we need to know just enough about what we do to be able to share that with others.
That's right? It. And there we go back to Pericles.
Yes.
But these brilliant people, but they can't share that. And that's what we have now bringing to the current time. How can a company solve the government's problem on a particular contract if they can't express it and show what it is and understand the government's position as well? This is what we've had a problem before. How can you change that? And if they don't have the ability to articulate and to be able to understand the government's problem, then they're not going to be able to get the contract. Unfortunately, another company could have a better way of expressing it, but less capability as engineers. And then we wind up with the government giving the contract to the wrong people. And that, I can tell you, is one who's a native of the Washington area. And we see that happen all the time. Yeah.
Right.
I play this image in my mind every time I talk about building a bridge. I imagine me on this floating island and whoever I'm talking to on a different floating island. And it is my job to identify the walls that are around you and the walls that are around me. They're all made from bricks. So then my job is to take down my walls and start building a bridge with those same bricks. Perfect. But I can't go to your floating island. So I have to vocalize to you and show you and inspire you to take down your walls, to start building your bridge from your side so that we can meet in the middle.
Meet in the middle and benefit from
and
that.
Benefit
mutual benefit.
Everyone.
That's the key. And that's what I find in training and in the book that I've written on this, which I call Bring Home the Bacon, which is a good title here. Doesn't do well in the Middle East.
No.
But anybody here knows the story. You know how it started, as far as I know. Itinerant workers would be hired by farmers to pull the crop. But the farmers didn't have the money to pay them until the crop was sold.
Yes.
So they paid them by slaughtering pigs and giving that, and the expression came of the itinerant workers' family saying, hey, make sure you bring home the bacon. And that's become a metaphor for making the sale, being successful. I've not run into one person born in the United States that does not know what bring home the bacon means. But people who are coming here, and my book is going to be soon translated into Spanish, and I speak Spanish.
Nice.
Nobody that I have spoken to who has just recently come from the Latin America understands it and bring home the bacon. They think I'm talking about a cookbook. And
well, it does sound delicious. And I didn't know where that phrase came from. That's so interesting. Every time I hear phrases like that, I keep thinking, what is the history behind them so I actually understand the context?
That's one of the definitions. There are others as well, because when I
Yeah.
was writing the book, I just say, what sort of I'd written a previous small book that wasn't that much, and I called it The Shortcut to Persuasive Presentations. Well, I wanted to come up with something, and sometime I was listening to someone talk on television, and they said, listen, we got to be able to bring home the bacon on this. And I said, bingo, there's my title.
So, what inspired you to become a writer? Does writing come naturally for you?
I'm more of a speaker than I am a writer.
Okay. So then
And
why write?
And I guess the reason I wrote the book after doing so much speaking during my military career, when I was the senior briefer to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and then was over to the State Department defending our foreign policy, it was my wife finally said, why don't you write a book? She knew that I was, unlike most people, I was much happier in front of an audience than I was sitting behind a computer.
Yeah.
I mean, they talk about the loneliness of the long distance runner. Well, the loneliness of a writer, you're sitting there and you're saying, I could say that better. No, that's not the right way. And you're doing it. And I'm in that process right now, because I'm switching from Amazon, where it doesn't sell much, to a company with a title that I don't like, but they are great marketers. They're called Book Baby. And
Book
anybody,
Baby?
Book Baby, they're in
Okay.
New Jersey, just across the river from Philadelphia, my hometown. And they have great marketing. And so I'm switching over. They may even have a different cover, because part of the agreement that I'm signing with a package, which gives a lot of great marketing and advertising ads on LinkedIn and Google. But also I'm supposed to get a new cover. Now, this is the present cover, if you can see that.
Yay! Yep.
And I like that. So we'll probably get into some mediating, deciding which one, when they come up with a title, and I'll say, I don't like it. I like this title. And so we'll see how that works out.
Yeah.
But, the idea of building a bridge, of communicating with people, you'll find that better. But people have to get over that fear of speaking. That is the intimidating factor. I have had people in my workshops who have been sent in by their company, and they attend the morning session, and then they find out they're going to have to make a presentation. Don't come back in the afternoon. I don't know how they work that out with their management, who has said, and human resources, you will go to that session. And they're going to say, I'm not going to do it, especially in front of their peers, their friends. They're afraid of embarrassing themselves. And it's the fear of the unknown. So occasionally they will come back on a second session, and I'll take them aside and say, listen, everybody's in the same boat. You follow this method that I've developed, which I call the S3P3 system. You follow that, and I think you're going to find your confidence is going to build, because you're not going in there just speaking openly and not knowing. You're following a not rigid, I don't want to say that, but an established methodology. If you follow that methodology, your confidence will build. And when that confidence builds, you're going to say, let me at 'em. I want to go.
So I'm curious, when you were in the military, did you know that you would want to teach speaking after the fact? Where did that come from? How did that come into play?
It came when I was a second lieutenant. That's the lowest rank when you come into the Army. I gave a presentation. I have no idea what I knew to give a presentation to senior officers and senior sergeants and NCOs. Must have been some project I was working on. And then after it was over, this sergeant major, that's the highest rank of the enlisted services, he came over to me and he said, Lieutenant, you've got a lot of potential. You're a natural. You do tend to wander a little bit, and because you so enjoy what you're doing. He said, let me tell you what I followed in my 30-some years in the Army. Now, he had been in the Army longer than I'd been on Earth. and a second lieutenant should not think that that gold bar in his sleeve gives him knowledge. I said, absolutely, Sergeant Major. Give me any advice you can. He said, I followed 4 words: anticipate, draft, practice, brief. Brief is Army term for present. And I kept that in mind. And he said, you're always going to have time as your enemy when you're making a presentation.
Yep.
That's why we call it a brief. Maybe that may be the reason for it. But then I did. I was more disciplined and be able to do it. And then it just seemed to be, and every assignment I went to, perhaps because of a natural skill, I was made the duty briefer. Probably out of the other people said, great, let him do it. I don't want to do it. So I would do that. And then when I became a Latin American specialist and got my master's degree at Georgetown, and then went to Argentina for a year, and I traveled all over Latin America, and I received briefings and I gave briefings on it. Then I came back up to the Defense Intelligence Agency, and I was the desk officer for Argentina, and I had to give a briefing to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff because there were strange things happening in Argentina. It was a combination of military intelligence and stand-up comedy. I think my tendency to be expansive came out. But anyway, the chairman seemed to really enjoy it. And my boss went to the director of DIA and said, I hate to lose him, but the best place for him would be to be the head of the briefing team, which was just opening up then. So the 3-star general interviewed me, told me I'd be the best known major in the building. But if I embarrassed him or the Defense Intelligence Agency, he'd fire me in a minute, and that would probably ruin he want the job. No dramatic pause in between. So there was only one answer. I said, yes, sir, I want that job. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience on that. But that sort of put me into a pattern where I would be doing the briefing wherever. And then later in my career as a Latin American specialist, I became very involved in our Central American policy in the 80s in the Reagan administration. And the White House directed the Army to assign me to the State Department. And I would travel all over the country, and I gave probably almost 300 debates and panels. These were conflictive. I was dealing with people who did not like the policy. I would debate academics who, as I like to point out to them, they'd built their whole career in being against military dictatorships. Now they were defending one, the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. And it was interesting, the verbal gymnastics they had to go through, that even the students were laughing at them. And so that it just happened to be, and I always go back to that sergeant major who put me on the right track. Otherwise, I'd just be up there doing stand-up comedy in front of them. It lasted very long. But putting that discipline, and that led to this S3, P3 system, which sounds very scientific, but it's basically common sense and on how to do it. Let me just explain that. So otherwise, S3, P3, what's that? Imagine you have 3 pillars: substance, structure, and style. And they are supporting a pyramid of planning, practicing, and presenting. At that point, you see you're going to be able to have substance, which means content. Don't put too much fluff into it. People are attending a presentation to add information, to solve a problem. They don't want someone up there entertaining them. Here's my problem. Are you going to be able to solve it? And you want to be able to get that out to them right away. And then structure, I do something a little bit different on the structure. There we go. There's your pyramid.
I was like, I just had to switch it up. Just rethink.
I advocate drafting backwards. Most of from the time we've been in grade school, we've done show and tell. It's been introduction, body, conclusion. When you grow up and you're doing real presentations and you spend it that way, all of a sudden you come to the end of your time. Time is your enemy. And you don't have enough time for the key, for the takeaway, the conclusion. So I advocate what I call 3-1-2. Develop your conclusion first, then develop your opening. So you've got the 2 of them, and then you've got the meat. In my book, I have an article on the Philly cheesesteak. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the Philadelphia cheesesteak, the most famous steak in the country, but I use the cheesesteak as an anomaly, as an analogy for making a presentation. You've got your bottom roll, that's your conclusion. You've got your top roll, that's the introduction. In between, you have the cheese and the steak and the onions, and that's the meat of your presentation. But make sure that you have your conclusion down so that if all of a sudden you come in with a 20-minute presentation and you're told, hey, listen, the boss only has about 5 minutes. What do? Well, a couple of options. You can say, well, I'm sorry, if he doesn't have 20 minutes for me, I don't have 5 minutes for him. That's not career enhancing. So have that conclusion in your mind. And if you can only do that, that's it. Just go in and say, the problem that I've looked at, I see is this. Here is my solution. Be delighted to come back whenever you have the time to bring this out in the full image of what it is. And I think that's it. So that, and then the other, I heard your previous guest talking about practicing. Practice. The old joke, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? You practice. I think preparation is so very important. And I bring with me from the military a technique. It's the name you will probably grimace when you hear it. It's called the murder board. And it's the murder board. It sounds like it's something coming from the old Tony Soprano. Remember the Soprano TV program? But it started in World War II when they were auditioning people to go to officer candidate school, and they wanted to test their mental strength. So they brought them in and they put them through absolute terror. At the end, it was sort of like a doctoral dissertation. But then they felt they were mental. Well, that doesn't transfer into that, and it's become a part of life in the military. You go through this system, you practice, and you get all the tough questions. You work on the answers on that. And at the end, your confidence builds up because you figure, I can handle anything this audience throws at me. So that and the 3-1-2 system, I think, are the most important part of mine. But preparing yourself, and the more you prepare, the more you are going to see your confidence build up when you deal with a simulated audience. So that's sort of a quick summary of the S3T3 system.
Okay, so you talked about writing. We have about 4 minutes left. We talked about writing. Double checking. No, we have more than that. Phew. Okay, it's the time zone conversions that get me. Good. I still want to talk about you writing, but you also love speaking. So what is it that you love about speaking?
Speaking, you can share your ideas with more people in a personal way. Perhaps not more people. Writing, you can do it with more. I've seen a definition that writing is more effective, but speaking is more to the moment, where you can talk to people, inspire them where they can go to write. And I don't see that great a difference between the two. I push myself away from having anybody edit my writing because I like to write the way I speak.
Yes.
And I go directly, and I think you're doing that. And if you can, people are used to doing that. You read some textbooks or you read newspapers. Sometimes they're written. You have to go back onto it because they're not writing with that reading audience in mind. They're themselves. But when you speak on there, and they blend the two of them together. So I really don't see that great a difference between the two, except people are not shy about writing, but they are shy about speaking. They will sit down. There's now in the news the doctor who was very strong on vaccines said he's not going to debate RFK Jr. And he said, we don't debate in science, we write papers. Whoa, I said, oh, right there. He's opening himself up. And of course, anybody would debate RFK Jr. would have to put up with that raspy voice of his. So he ought to do more writing and speaking. But the two of them, I don't see that serious a difference between the two. You can write privately, speaking, you're public, and you're exposing yourself to criticism. You may not be correct on certain points, and someone will do it. I had a technique that I used when I went to colleges, and most of my audiences were college students, and they were generally groups that were opposed to our policy. So I would call the student who was in charge, and talk to him and find out a little about the group. And when I realized that it wasn't going to be a walk in the park, I said, "Listen, suppose I come out a day early and you and two or three of your friends get together and we have some pizza and beer, and I'll pick up the tab. And did you ever know college students who would turn down pizza and beer?
Nope.
So I always did that.
I
I
would,
mean,
but
we got across. I got it. They were able to see me as a human being, not as a remote corporate figure from Washington coming out with a party line. And then when we got to the actual presentation the next night, some of them turned out to be my defenders against the critics in the audience.
aw,
We did that one time. It was the university, I think it was University of Oregon in Eugene, Oregon. And that's where I knew when I found out the student group was called the Students for a Sane Policy in Central America. I knew they're not going to be the college Republicans coming out. They're going to be opposed. So that's when I did it the first time. And after that, it was beer at every college that I went to do that, to be able to talk to them and greet them and meet them as human beings. Once they saw me as a human being, they were then a little more open to hearing me speaking from the platform. And I had a lot of knowledge because I'd worked on developing the policy. So I think the personal relationship, or perhaps we could say interpersonal relationship, is so important when you're giving a presentation to anybody. You want to know your audience, and you want them to know you. That's an important. Most books on public speaking say know your audience. Not many of them say let the audience get to know you, because you're the one that's giving that message. And I think that's a very important concern for anybody that is speaking to a group, whether they're friendly or not. The more they know about you, the more credibility you have. And credibility is very subjective. I hear people say, I've got great credibility on this subject, and I just grimace when I hear that. The audience determines whether you have credibility. They're the ones that are going to make that judgment, and you've got to be able to show your credentials and then demonstrate your knowledge of it. That's why in the front of my book, I have the credential of Ronald Reagan saying something nice about me on stage. And so that does well. I learned that at my retirement ceremony from the Army. I it was a retired lieutenant general that was doing the MC, and then one of the people attending was the deputy of public affairs for the White House. And he stood up and said, "May I speak? I'm not on the list, but I have a letter from the president for Colonel Tracy." And everybody, whoa. So the 3-star general said, "Well, of course you can." So he came up and he read this very nice letter in which the president said I'd been an effective, an extraordinarily effective speaker. So a week later, after my retirement, I had lunch with this fellow. I said, "How in the world did that come about?" And he explained that I was in the office with the president, and we were talking about messaging. And he had a little radio on there where he could listen to various talks being given in the building. And he said, "I recognized your voice." And then he said, the president stopped and said, who is that? And he said, "Well, that's Colonel Larry Tracy. He's on loan from the Pentagon to the State Department, and he's doing most of the speaking for us around the country." He said, the president, he said, "And they call me the great communicator?" Now, this guy was a BS artist of all time, so I don't know if that's true or not. But once that letter came out, I made sure that it would be part of my biography, because that's a little bit. So it's writers certainly need to have that as well. You're not going to buy a book unless you see something about it. That the key is people listening or reading want something that will increase their knowledge, solve their problem. And if they find it from a credible source, then it's worthwhile going into Amazon and buying the book. If they don't know it, or they say, "Well, who is this guy?" they'll look for another one. So you've got to be able to sell yourself before you tell your story.
Oh, yes. One of the things that I question, since we were talking about challenging earlier, is I question when people say, just get your audience to know you, like you, and trust you. Because it feels like I want you to get to know me, get to like me, get to trust me, when we know it's not about me. Yeah. It's about them.
Say, "Let me tell you about myself." And I go, "Oh, no."
Oh, la, la, la. Yeah. So I keep telling people, is like, as a speaker, as an author, as a podcaster, whatever it is, you're sharing your message. You have to know yourself first. Know, like, and trust yourself. Then you have to get to know, like, and trust your audience.
That's
So
right.
that they have that space so that they can learn to do that for themselves before they ever have the capacity to do it for you.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Because most of the time they're not there yet.
The main question that audiences have, writing or readers, I should say, or listeners,
Yeah.
is what's in it for me? That's
Exactly.
key. And you have to be able to tell them at the beginning of your presentation, here is
Yep.
the problem that I see that you have. I'm going to present you information that you'll be able to solve that problem. Then, of course, with the conclusion that you have already developed ahead of time, you're
Yep.
moving towards that, and that's the answer. And your ideal would be that the audience walks out saying, well, I didn't know that before, but now I have it. So you must always solve the what's in it for me, because that's what audiences are looking for at all time, whether they're reading or whether they're listening.
My favorite part is when you go in and you do address what they think that they need. Some people think they need a website. It's like, well, why do you need a website? Because I want to find more clients. Well, why are you choosing a website? Like, let's go deeper. And so you go in with speaking to the need that they think that they want, and then you give them more of the truth, give them more of a perspective. And then you kind of bring them over here and go, this is probably what you're actually looking for. So let's address this instead of wasting all of our time over here.
Yeah.
And as an audience member, I'm like, wow.
No, let me tell you a story that it's with all the audiences that I spoke to, especially all these tough audiences, you would
Yeah.
think I would not be nervous in speaking. Hey,
Yes.
I always face the prospect of being humiliated, and that's something that caused that. But after I retired, I was hired by a commercial real estate group to speak at their convention, and it went well. And I explained my S3P3 system, and they seemed to take it. And I was walking out with the woman who had hired me, and she said, "You know, you've got to be under tremendous pressure when you make a presentation like this." And I'm thinking, hey, the audience that I spoke to, commercial real estate agents, but I didn't. I said, no, not really. But why do you say so? She said, we're commercial real estate salespeople. We are selling or leasing buildings. If our presentation doesn't go well, the building still has its value. We either get someone else up there or we do a better job the next time. She said, you are primarily a teacher of speaking. If you bomb in front of an audience, who in the world is ever going to invite you? She said, and she said, because you are the property. And it felt like a punch in the stomach. And I said, thinking to myself, I never thought of that. So after that, every time I gave a presentation to the group, I had a little mantra ahead of time. I am the property. I am the property. Don't mess this up. So it's, you have to know that. You have to know your limitations. You don't want to be overconfident when you, and that's really not the problem most people have. They're not, but you have to have some sort of a medium. I know my material. I've tested it out. I've gone through the practice sessions and the murder board. I've answered tough questions, but there are probably tough questions out there that haven't been asked, and maybe I'll get one now. And if you do, and you can't answer it, just say, I can't answer that. I don't know, but I'll get that for you. And then make sure you do. You get it back
Follow
to
up.
the organizer was, or do it, or call the person in person, say, you asked this question. Never promise to give an answer and then you don't give it. Your credibility is shot at that point. And credibility is the most important element that a communicator has. Be able to be believed that we don't expect them to understand everything and know everything, but we expect honesty. And that's so very important in speaking, that you maintain your integrity and you are honest in answering questions. And when you can't answer it, tell them I won't, but I'll get it for you. And then do everything you can to get that answer to that person and to the group as a whole, if you possibly can.
Let's add an extra layer to that idea that you are the product of the type of service that you give. Because as a speaker and you teach speaking, you want to be the best version of you. But let's layer that with also, I'm a human being and I make mistakes sometimes.
Sure.
I'm not always at my best. And so then the idea is, how can I prevent trips and falls? How can I prevent those days where I'm not at my best? How do I also prevent that mindset of thinking I always have to be the best? And one example is exactly what you just gave. Say, I don't have the answer right now, but I would love to talk to you about it. Connect with me afterwards.
And,
right?
one other thing, when I was out speaking for the government, I never used visuals. Now, PowerPoint was just coming in at that point. So, but I
Yes.
had the overhead transparencies. I never,
I love those.
because I didn't want to do it. There was a program, I remember a long time ago, I think it was called The Selling of the Pentagon. And it was about how the Pentagon's public relations people would get all their the positions they were selling, and they make the slides up, and then speakers would go out. I didn't want to fall into that trap at all. I wanted to go out, so I never used visuals. PowerPoint, I think, is a wonderful program. I look back, I said, I kind of wish I had that, but then I'd say, no, I don't, because it's such a funny program with all the arrows coming in different directions and everything, that they overwhelm the message that comes. But I want to just speak for myself, because I was selling myself as the product. And if they accepted me as a credible person, then maybe they would accept the policy we were developing, which I had helped develop and was a firm believer in. So it wasn't any conflict on my part. But that is a key, that you are ready for those. Be ready for those bad days when you're just not in the zone, to use the athletic term. Sometimes it's going to be, and then you just hope that you can get this thing over with without too much of a disaster. But if you prepared yourself well, that shouldn't happen. If you've practiced in front of a simulated audience, and you've asked them you've shared them every bit of intelligence you have on the audience, they'll delight in throwing tough questions at you, your buddies, and that's good if they do that. You don't want it to turn into a bull session, but at the same time, you don't want it with just polite little questions. You want tough questions if they were the audience. And if you're doing this in a company, and the boss is the type that constantly interrupts with questions, have a person play the boss who constantly is going to interrupt, so that you are being thrown off track all the time. You make the murder board as close as possible to what the actual presentation will be, and you're in better shape at that point than just going out and saying, "Boy, I hope I can get through this thing."
Well, and
not
an
problem.
And an observation as I'm listening to you guys talk, and I find you so fascinating, because I don't find you a speaker and an author. I find you a speaker, an author, a historian, and a comedian. And you've got this, right? You've got this great combination that I don't think, and when Laura mentioned about preventing, how do we prevent, right? I don't know if it's a preventing or embracing, right? Embracing our imperfections and embracing that we are human. And so if you get into and I'm sure you can relate to this, Larry, when you get into an opportunity where you're speaking to a group of very stern and strict, professionals, and you're not getting the crowd, if you threw in a historical fact into a story that tied into what you were talking about, and then threw some comedy in there, you'd have everyone in that audience, right? So I'm guessing you really know how to read your audience, and that's a key thing too, right?
When you talk about the stiff stuff, military audiences,
right?
When I'm briefing the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and all these 3-star generals who are not really, at least in that position, they're not really nice, fun guys. And there were so many, when I briefed that first time, that really led to me getting into the job. I was telling about the stories of Juan Perón in Argentina, who had just died and been succeeded by his wife as the vice president. And she was being advised by a mystic who, as she was giving a talk, he's standing next to her talking. And it turned out, when it was asked about it, he said he was channeling the information from the dead Juan Perón to his wife. Well, I brought that out, and within the military boundary, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who I've never seen laugh at all, he was an Air Force 4-star general, almost fell out of his seat. And I think that's really what got me the job, because he liked it. Because the director of DA said he'd never seen the chairman relate as positively to a briefer as he had to me. And it was because of the humor that was put into it. And it's just natural that I have to do that. It's my Irish background of doing that. And that so,
Nice.
but in other audiences, I would see people that tried to be a little bit humorous and tell jokes and never tell a joke. You're, that is the genius. If you can put humor into the content of what you're saying and a
Mhm.
little bit of irony, that's fine. But don't think you're going to break the ice by telling a joke. That is some of the dumbest advice I see given
Ooh,
to people and speaking. They do it,
yeah.
and I think the poor people who have taken that advice and then go out and do it, and they're finished. So
Yeah.
Oh, Larry.
And when you're saying, you tell a joke, but add humor, and I love that. I love that. I don't think I could have spoken that better. Add humor into what you teach so that you're adding the humor in and you're still teaching them. They're still
yeah,
learning. You're
that's
still
right.
relating. You're still connecting,
Mm.
right?
Mhm. And you're constantly contacting with that audience. They're relating to you as a
Yes.
human being. I
Yeah.
Yes.
attribute my success in the college campuses to drinking beer with the students the day before, and I lessened the opposition they may have had towards some Army colonel coming from Washington. You could imagine that in a fairly liberal student body. But then the word started to go around the campus. Hey, this dude's pretty good. He knows his stuff, and he's a good guy. And then when they
Oh,
came, they were not as hostile to me as they were to some of the State Department people that I knew that would go out. And then I always stayed around for more beer and, and just chatting with them after it was over. Whereas the colleagues in the State Department did this just took off right away. I called it post speech mingling, and you do
Mm.
that, you can get a lot of your points through at that point better when you're off the platform and you're just talking with guys and you're sitting around. And
I don't want this to end.
one university, the ones that I'd had beer with, a woman came up later and said, I don't agree with anything that Ronald Reagan says, and I don't agree with anything you said, but you're just too damn likable. And then she walked off. And I turned to the guys with me and I said, was that a mistake? Was that a compliment or what? They said, yes. So that's another indicator. A speaker has to be likable. We tend to take information from people we like, and it has to be genuine. You have to be honest about it. So
Mm,
not just go in there and faking it out, but do that. And
good.
then if you believe in your subject, as I certainly did on that, then you go out. Maybe you can can score a few points for your side when you do it that way. But always be human, always
Mm,
be genuine, and look at it and never lie. I mean, just go out. I would not. There were a lot of things were happening in our policy at that point, and I would call back to Washington before I went onto the stage to say, "What disaster has happened down there now that I'm liable to be hit with?" And they'd tell me, and if it was something really bad, I would bring it out before my opponents would. And I
mm.
said, I want to bring this out and then try to put it into some sort of context.
Good. So, Larry, you're just too lovable, Larry. Can can you give us like really quick, because we are a couple minutes over, like how do we find you? Where do people get a hold of you?
Well, I've taken my website down for now because I'm going
Okay.
to be taking it off of Amazon. And
Yes.
sometime in mid July, I think my book will be up again. And it's www.bookbaby.com. I wish they called
Okay.
it Book Master or Book Genie. I don't like the term book. I've told them that, but they have a masterful advertising program, and that's it. And then, of course, Corey at BLU certainly knows how to get in touch with me at any
Yes.
time. And I
Yeah.
hope I'll be going. I spoke at Stanford. I hope I'll be going at perhaps not the Cambridge, but the Oxford. My
Okay.
son-in-law is German, is a graduate of Oxford. He and my daughter are both graduates of Cambridge, and their daughter is now studying, who is bilingual in German, is studying in Berlin. And so I may try to get onto that October deal with Oxford, but
Mm,
certainly I'll be staying in contact with Corey. And my chapter on
great.
on the S3P3 is in the new Marie Diamond book that's just coming out. I'll
Nice.
be able to see in written form
That's
what I've been talking about here.
well, thank you so much. I'm going to send you to the back room and we'll bring our next guest up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's
Thank
been a
you.
real pleasure.
Bye.
Yeah. And as Corey goes,
Hi, Michele.
Hi.
Look, we made it. Ooh, I like your earrings.
Hi,
Okay.
Susan. Thank you. I don't often wear earrings.
I can't with the headphones, but I'm
Yeah,
like, this is the setup that I need right now because my
there you
laptop is
go.
dead.
There you
But
go.
it's all good. We work through tech issues. We work through just everything, whatever we can. Okay, Michele, I'm just going to take a deep breath and just like wiggle it out and let it out for me because I want to shift a little bit. Let the audience get to know you. Yes. So, Michele, I want the audience to get to know you, but I have this fun opening question that I've been playing with, and we're also going to have another one later. But this opening question is, if there were 3 words that you would love other people to use to describe you, what would those 3 words be?
To describe me.
Hmm.
A bunch of words pop up, but the ones that really stand out, I would say,
Oh.
energetic,
Ooh, okay.
Motivator, and fiery.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
I get that one a lot because I'm a redhead, but
That's
okay.
awesome.
So the follow-up question is, of course, why? Why would you like to be described as energetic, as a motivator, and as fiery?
Okay, well, as a holistic health and fitness coach, I think it makes sense, right? I firmly believe and know with all my being that the energy that I bring and exude, will activate other people. So it just goes hand in hand, right? We know that where our energy, our focus goes, our energy flows, and how we present and show up, it's going to exude that out to other people, right? So we have the power within us to change anything, our shift our mood, shift other people's mood or state at any point in time. And so this is why, right? And so through the work that I do, helping people move their bodies, they're literally moving energy and shifting and creating to a different mood or a mindset, right? They're to working towards their goals. Fiery, I think that's really, it's kind of crazy, but I'm a Scorpio, born in November. I'm very passionate in terms of the work that I do, in terms of the person that I am, and those people that know me and my clients that I work with, my fiery passion energy all kind of comes out at once, right? So
I love that because now we get to know a little bit about the Michele behind the stories, the Michele behind the business. It's like, who is Michele and what is important to her, but not just asking you, what do you value?
right. Yeah.
Right? It's kind of having this little story behind it. So then how do these 3 words, energetic, motivator, and fiery, how do those blend into the message that you want to share with people?
Well, again, like I said, I'm a holistic health and fitness coach. And so let me just describe that a little bit. First, I think that will help the audience to really understand holistic. We hear that it's almost like a buzzword in some cases.
Yes.
But truthfully, it comes along with my own personal fitness journey, is that we really have to, in order to change, let me start by this. We all look at ourselves in the mirror, right? Body image, self-image is a big thing. But physically, we see ourselves physically every day. We look at ourselves in the mirror, or we don't look at ourselves in the mirror for things that we feel we are flawed or we don't love about ourselves. And so often my clients are wanting to change something, lose weight,
Yes.
Shrink a size, that kind of thing, right? And I completely get where they're at, But if we only focus on the physical aspect of ourselves, we are missing a total whole other aspect of our being. And so shifting to how the mind and body connection happens, and everything starts in our mind. And so if we do really truly want to change something that we are doing, change a behavior, change a physical thing about ourselves, whether it be through physical fitness or otherwise, we really have to embody that in our mind first. And so that is how this whole holistic aspect comes. And so really truly it is mind, body, and spirit or soul simply being our higher self. Like, what do we really truly desire? So those people that work with me will kind of get this whole encompassing, fiery, passionate, energetic, right? So it's my job to tap into that, help my client tap into their mindset, to kind of crack them open a little bit further, to really help them, see beyond what they see are their limits.
Yeah.
And, to break down those barriers and minds. And it's through the mind. Everything we do is through the mind. And shifting from the focus of wanting to lose weight to being stronger in mind and body. So it's a really paradigm shift. And of course, I tend to get a little loud, I must admit. Like when I get fired up, my voice. Right now, I'm running a boot camp, and actually, it's all ladies that I'm running this boot camp with, and it's so much fun. But the energy is crazy, right? The energy is crazy, and that just gets people going. It boosts their energy, it boosts their mood, and that is why I do it, to crack people open, to really have them see themselves from a different perspective, because it really all comes from within. And it's all about self-love. Everything we do is about self-love. Fitness is self-love. Taking care of yourself is self-love.
I love that so much. I just want to interject here for a second, because when you said fiery, right?
Yes.
What I saw was this movement and this fire inside of you. Like there's this movement and this fire just inside of you. And you've got it in your eyes. Like you've got that, right? And so fiery is one of the perfect words. But I love what you said about that mindset and that mind shift around being healthy. And it's not about losing weight. It's about being healthy and being happy in the body that you're in. It's taken me years to understand that.
Amen. Yeah.
Right. But when you said about that, I just saw this fire inside of you, and that's so infectious. And so, yeah, you're motivating. Just listening to everything that you're saying is so motivating. And you listen. And I mean, we've met briefly, but and I had the pleasure of being in the same space as you for a little while. But you exude as much outward as you do inward. So you take in as much as you give out. And you give out so much, and then you're like, oh, I got to take it in. And so that energy that you need to bring in, and I'm sure you do that for your clients as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Susan.
You're welcome.
So I love that. And it's great. I love that. And yes, we had a chance to meet briefly at UCLA and share the same space. And it really, it depends on who I'm working with, right? Some people really need a very soft, gentle approach. Other people want more of that, go-getter, like fire energy right away. So it really, really depends on where a person's at. And, the biggest thing that I look for in people that I work with, in my clients, is that it's that I'm ready. And a ready means like they are like a 10. Like, how many of us, myself included, have ever wanted something, said we're ready, ready to do the thing. And then it's like, oh, like we hide.
I knew it was coming.
Right? Or we come up with, again, health and fitness, we come up with excuses, or it's not the right time, or I can't do this because of that. And so we need to, if we really want something, we need to go after it, but be a 10. Be ready for change. I always say, face your fears and do it anyway. Like, what is the worst thing that can happen? It's probably the greatest thing that could happen.
Yes. And I think that this fire that I'm seeing inside of you is this like, if you're ready and you're 10 and you're ready to go and I'm, and it's hot, it's fiery, I'm there, the flame's up. If not, there's just this little ember. I'm going to get it to a flame and I'm going to help you burn and I'm going to help you grow. But, right. And to recognize that, right. We were talking about that earlier. And I think just recognizing that energy and recognizing what you need. And I love when you said, feel the fear and do it anyways. I tell people that as well. And it's, you jump on that stage, embrace what's happening, embrace what you're going through, and then step in and just deliver and be you. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Be you.
So I'm going to share something. So when you came on and I saw you in the background, I read eyes. So I already saw the flame, but it's like tunnels of spiral flames in your eyes. It's really cool. I've never seen it before. But then I started yawning when you actually came on the screen. And for me, yawning is how I process emotions.
Yeah.
It's not always mine. Sometimes it's other people's. And sometimes now, which is new, it's what other people are reflecting in my own that I never noticed. So when Susan told you about how you have made her feel and some of that kind of stuff, I was like, oh, wait. That about the giving and receiving part, I was like, right. That is probably why I'm yawning right now.
Wow.
Because that's something that I'm working on.
That's amazing. I've done a lot of just personal growth and energy work myself, and just really doing a deep dive into understanding who I really wanted to become. Right. So I get that. I notice. Well, I also know that you've probably been talking for the last couple of hours.
I'm also really hungry right now, and I'm like, I can't leave for another 2 hours to eat something.
But it's true. It's true. It doesn't matter where we are in the world. We are all connected, and energy, processing energy. About my eyes, though, I find that fascinating. I have 3 kids, and when my kids look at, especially one of my daughters, she's very, when she was younger, she's 13 now. She would say to me, "Mom, your eyes are like diamonds or like sunflowers." To me, right? Oh, that's interesting, but very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I love that.
Yeah.
So you told us a little bit about what holistic fitness means for you, and you told us a little bit, like this much, of your background in the explanation of the energetic motivator and fiery person that you are. What is this story? Like, why did you get into holistic fitness? Yeah. Why is this so important to you that you need to share it with other people?
Well, so I guess it goes back. I'll try and do a fast track, of course. And how this all came about, we all have a story. And the whole fitness aspect of things, I got into it later in my late 20s, whatever. I wasn't feeling great. Had some weight issues. I had no energy at all. I wasn't taking care of myself. And I embraced and did a 12-week transformational journey. So it was physical. It was physical fitness. So got into that. But some mindset stuff too. And through that 12-week process, I followed a plan. I had a coach, followed a plan. And after that 12 weeks, I had such significant results that both just physical changes and habit, lifestyle changes, just feeling really good about where I was at. My mind was feeling more confident, that it was like, okay, I was bit by the bug, and that just then became part of my life. Yeah. And instead of doing 12 weeks, then it just became lifestyle. And so through the years, I have had some ups and downs and different, we all do. About 7 years ago, I was involved in a car accident. And it was at that point in time where sort of the wind was taken out of my sail, and I was affected. My back was affected. And after numerous appointments and therapists and whatnot, and eventually I wasn't getting any better, I'd gotten out of bed one morning after not feeling, I was active, still trying to do what I could do, but I got out of bed one morning and I was totally, I heard a pop. I went down to the ground, was totally taken down. And I had to call EMS. I didn't know what was happening. My legs went numb and all the things were happening. And of course, panic set in. So fast track after that and not really getting an answer, I showed that I had severe back injury with fractured vertebrae and herniated discs and different things. So without a word of a lie, it took me over 2 years to rehab myself back to a place of stability with my back. Mm-hmm. And the only reason that I started to heal was because of part of the process was, while I was not physically able to really sustain myself, I had a hard time walking and even working, doing different things. I wasn't active. It was such a mind-blowing experience that I started going deeper into mindset, because I had a vision one day, and I was praying to God to show me some signs that I would actually get better. And I was told to heal from the inside out. Mm-hmm. And that was when I really dove deep into personal growth stuff, learning everything about back injuries and trauma, and learning that we hold emotion, energy, trauma at a cellular level, and that it was deeper rooted than my physical outer being, that it was deeper rooted than my my body was really rooted deeply. The trauma was holding me down and preventing me from healing. And so I knew with all my being that this was it, and that it was, again, the mind-body connection. Now, I'm all about science and I get all that stuff, but I was whoa, I firmly believe there's always a reason for everything. And it made so much sense to me that I started really then learning everything I could about the mind-body connection and tapping into that wealth of knowledge and really understanding what is trauma. And so that took me back years and years and years and years, well back into my childhood and my teenage years, to unravel some things that I was really holding tight, that subconsciously I wasn't even aware. And so understanding to, how I rehab myself, what I did to do that, I was like, there are so many people in this world, especially women, because I was at my point in my 40s where I was not loving life. And it was hard to say that. It was hard to acknowledge that. And I wasn't loving life. I was having a tough time with relationships. On the outside, I looked like I had it all together. But on the inside, I was really, truly in turmoil. And I didn't know who I was anymore. So I know now, in hindsight, I believe that accident, my back injury, happened for a reason. It happened to wake me up. And so now, through all of the things that I've done, I've realized healing from the inside out is so powerful. It is the way we all need to really connect to ourselves, right? Tapping into our intuition. We all have our own source of knowledge. We have all the answers. We just have to tap into it. Mm-hmm. And often we are looking on the outside for validation. We're wanting to fit in, be skinnier, taller, better hair, different color, whatever it is. We're all trying to figure out how we fit into the world when all we have to really do is be ourselves. And you said it earlier, right? So that is how and why I'm so passionate now to really work with more people to get my story out in the world, is that there's so many of us struggling to want to be different, but we're going at it backwards. We're going at it completely, the backwards way. And it's not about being skinny. It's not about if I lose the 20 pounds or the 50 pounds, then I'll have this. It's really, we've got to come back to ourselves. And what I find, which is empowering, is that when we do come back to ourselves, and when I teach my clients to do the same, things literally shift. You start creating space because they're allowing themselves permission to let go of things that they're holding themselves hostage to, right? The weight starts to come off, the energy starts to come up, they start to feel better. They start to show up with more confidence. It's beautiful transformation to see.
For some reason, I just blinked. I was like, let's highlight that for a moment. My apologies. What did you say like 3 sentences ago?
I don't know. See, I like say things, and it's like it comes to me, and then
I know.
And
it's gone. That's fine.
So I think I can capture what you were going to ask, Laura, because I'm like feeling, and it's so funny because throughout like this morning, right, every speaker that we've had, Laura's been thinking something, and I'm like, I'm going to say this, and I'm like, nope, I'm going to say it, and then Laura says it like verbatim. It's like we're in each other's
Or the speaker
mind.
does. It's like just all of us are bouncing off, and I'm like, because the whole time I think of patterns. So I'm like, how can I take wherever the conversation goes and tie it in? And every time I think that, whoever was speaking is like, let's tie it in. I'm like, oh my God, yes.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And I think what it was is that whole idea of, and I hung on every word you were talking about.
So I forget.
Right? The spine and the trauma. And because I've had back surgery. When I was 18, I was told I had the bones of an 80-year-old. Right. Oh, wow. And so, of course, my brain was like, what? Right. I'm old. I have to function differently. I have to, right. And when something comes up for us on that health level, we so exude that into the world. And sometimes we have to change the mind into the body, and sometimes we have to change the body into the mind. Right. And that's why they all have to work together. And I think what you were saying was just that whole piece of how energetically you have to do what you're doing and be what you're being. And once you are, and once you're happy with that, and once you know that, believing in yourself, then the weight starts to come off, and the story starts to come out, and the work starts to blossom and grow. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It was something in there.
Yeah.
And I don't even know.
I teach younger girls as well, like empowerment, teaching with girls. And it's so powerful because we've got to shift, especially for women. We're so hard on ourselves. So, we got to I have 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy. It's so important for us to empower our youth to feel good about themselves and where they are at. But it is our responsibility to give them, to teach them what is that healthy lifestyle. And it's what I love is too, it's not cookie cutter, right? But we've got to shift away from the skinny, the Barbie doll era, the 80s, the 80s, to, the Barbie and Ken. That's not realistic. It's not realistic. But we do need, to embrace ourselves for where we're at. And being a different body shape and size is a beautiful thing. Being comfortable in the skin that you're in is a beautiful thing. being strong in mind and body should be the goal, as opposed to wanting to portray, or try again to try and fit back into, our clothes we used to fit into 20, 30 years ago, right? Yeah. For some of us, that's okay. For some of us, it's not realistic, and that's okay too, so yeah. And as a coach, I do get really fired up because there's a lot of misconstrued information out there. There's a lot of different things out there in the media that there's just so much information that's confusing, both on, about body image and self-image and what foods we should eat. Food is food, period. Let's not give food any more meaning than food is fuel. It is not.
Unless you have allergies.
I have allergies too. But even then, food, though, the purpose of food is to fuel our body. So thinking again about that holistic approach is like, okay, the pillars are really, what food are you fueling your body with for energy? Your mind, what are you doing there you go. What are you doing to protect your energy, to preserve your energy, to create more energy, to calm your mind? What are you doing to calm your mind, right?
I got lots more colors.
Yes.
They're all good.
And I have to say this because this is a big thing that's coming up, and so I'm 51. I'll be 52. I have to speak to this because see this all over the place. We talk about hormones, and as we age, hormones become more of a role in our life. And now I understand it at an even deeper level now than I did, say, 3 years ago, because I've been continue to learn. But hormones are everything. So in order for us to really be at our optimal health, we must be balanced in body and mind. It's not easy because we're human and we're busy and we're entrepreneurs and we're coaches and trainers and moms and dads and all the things, right? We're business people. And so it's hard to be that complete balance all the time. But what are we doing to take care of our mind? What are we doing to take care of our body? To create that balance, to create that optimal health, to manage stress. That is one of the biggest things that is hidden. And I say that because as we are after 40, it seems, life starts to take on a little bit different meaning sometimes for people. And this, of course, when it kind of hit me, hormones start to play a bigger role. And stress is one of those things that we have in our life that will drive us crazy in a negative way or drive us and motivate us. So if it's too much on the negative, we've got to really find, again, balance to manage our stress to optimally be able to show up as our best self, right? So hormones are just crazy. Hormones are definitely things we need to keep in check. And I won't get into this today at all, but another topic and a whole bunch of other hormones that can be playing a role and a factor into where the unbalances show up.
Definitely. So I remember what I was going to ask earlier, and I can tie it into everything that we're saying. So earlier you had mentioned, the weight just starts coming off once you start to practice these habits and understand your body. And then you use the words let go. That's the part that I was trying to remember. I was like, what were the keywords? Because for years, I was like, what do people mean by let go? Like, I don't get it. Now I get it. But for years, I was like, I don't know what they mean. So can you elaborate a little bit on what it looks like to let go and to move into this space of just allowing, and then the weight comes off. The body shapes itself according to your health. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And those two words, right? Let go. And we hear limiting beliefs and different things that that could resonate with some. I like to really break it down to being the things that are keeping you stuck. Like, what is it in your life that if you sat there and closed your eyes and reflected, in terms of where you're at, the things that you feel you're not happy about, maybe are standing out in your mind. Those are the things that we've got to, and sometimes we're consciously aware of the things and other times we're not, which is where, sometimes we do need somebody else to help us unwrap, peel the onion, I say, right? Unravel it all. But letting go of those things that are keeping us stuck in our ways, letting go of the story, like Susan's, your story that you said about when you were 18, somebody told you that you had a body of an 80-year-old.
Bones of an 80-year-old. Yeah.
Bones of an 80-year-old. So that, even though at the time you probably didn't think too much of, like, it embedded in your brain. Our brains are supercomputers, right? So we tend to create these stories in our mind. They get stuck, and as a subconsciously in our brain being a supercomputer, it's always things playing and playing and playing in the background, even though we may not be aware of it. So letting go of the stories that this shoulds, I could, I wish, or I'm this and that, I can't tell you how many stories I have let go and let go and let go again and again until I actually really truly let them go, because there are layers and layers of layers of thoughts that we have, and that's purely all they are thoughts that are embedded, that we create a story about, or we hold ourselves hostage to, so the act of letting go is simply realizing that is that person's perspective. That is not really truly who I am. Or that is a story that makes no sense now. And why am I even caring about it anyway? The big thing about it is to just, again, letting go means just showing up as who you truly are, letting go of being the people pleaser, the trying to fit in, that is when we can start to really, because our thoughts, everything is energy. Again, once we start to acknowledge and realize that really doesn't make sense, or it's not truth, it's not really who I truly am, and you let go, and you're able to, like, release yourself, give yourself permission to step out of that story or that mold or that habit that you've created, or the behavior that showed up because of that thought. It creates space, and therefore you have more space is space, and everything's energy. So you've got to fill that space with something else. But once you're able to let go, that shift occurs. The body can release the emotion, the trauma, the weight, the negative energy, and it allows you to replace it with that better thought, that new habit, that new energy.
Yeah, I got to jump in here because it goes right back to what you were saying about healing from the inside out, right? And that mind shift and that body. And I come back to that. When Laura said about letting go, I'm like, oh, okay, yes, and I want to say this. And then you said that. And it's we know this stuff, but the acceptance of it and the embracing it, right? And knowing, like, when my hormones went wild at 40 and I'm now 56, and I embrace the fact that I am never gonna be that slim, trim Barbie model, because I wasn't meant to be. I am meant to be who I am, and I'm just going to embrace that me-ness, right? And be okay with how I am. But I think it's important, and you've said this without saying these words, I think it's so important that we let our kids be who they are and let our kids embrace that they have differences, but it's who they're meant to be. Because whether we're that skinny person or that thick person, it doesn't really matter, right? Because we're all going to have this mental mindset issue of,
Right.
oh, well, I want to be better. I want to be different. I want straight hair. I want curly hair. I want, I want to look good in that outfit that woman is wearing. Well, no, get a different outfit that you look good in and embrace what you
Absolutely. Yes, and stop comparing ourselves, right? And for some people, they are really into physical fitness and love that. And the other thing that we create, and other people are, as you can see, I jump around too. So and other people just love to be active and go for their walks or do yoga or swim or bike or whatever, right? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter, but we have the gift of movement. And that is another big thing that I put out there, is that we have the gift of movement. It wasn't until I couldn't move that I didn't realize how much I took it moving my body for granted. So move your body, move your assets. I always say, right? We have the gift of movement because we do, just because we do. And yeah, everything starts in the mind. So start empowering yourself with those feel good things every day instead of wishing you were different. See the person, the strengths that you have now while you're working towards that newer, higher version of yourself, right? People really want to have that workout plan, right? Plan is I always say, if you don't plan, you plan to fail. Have that plan, whatever it is. It's accountability to yourself. It's your prioritizing yourself. Your self-care is essential. So whatever that looks like, in your day or your week, carve it into your schedule. Put you in there. Because as I know for myself, as a busy mom, and over the years, I've always put everyone else first until I actually started to take a look at myself and realized I can't pour from an empty cup anymore. And that's another whole big shift. We feel so guilty to do something for ourselves, to take care of ourselves when in fact it's not selfish and it's essential. Even if just a few minutes a day.
Yeah. One of my favorite shows is Queer Eye, because it takes human beings through this process of understanding them as themselves and then showing them physically and their space that they can be this version that they want to be before they make all of those big changes to have that solid. It's like, yes. So then practicing it now so that it becomes more consistent later. I don't know why my light is doing this. That's fine. Slashing. It's good.
Oh, there you go.
So we have about 3 minutes left. Yeah, I'll just dance. Can you share with us, just in like one-ish sentences, if there was something that you just needed people to take away from this conversation, what would it be?
One of the things that we are not taught is about our intuition. And again, my mind just took me to when I was younger. I wasn't taught what intuition was. I wasn't taught how to follow my intuition, how to really tap into my inner being. And our intuition simply is our compass, and it's where all our answers are. And we just have to get good at listening to ourselves. Sometimes it means we have to get quiet and just have that pause in that moment to connect with our mind to our body and really truly understand, what is it that our body needs? What is it that our mind needs? What is it that I need in order to help me get there? Right. And so that is what I would, say, is that remember that we all have an inner compass. It's our guide. It's our knowledge. Our answers are all within. We don't have to seek validation from the outside world. we have it all within us. You just have to find it and go within. Yeah.
I love that. I've also been switching out the word find with uncover, because finding feels like it's this external thing, and I got in that pattern. That's why I keep switching words. And I was like, stop. It's not outside of me. It's already there. I've just covered it with all of my crap. Then I need to uncover it again. It's like, yeah, that feels better as it flashes more. I don't know what's going on. It's all good.
That's awesome.
So, Michele, how do we find you? What is your favorite way for people to reach you?
So, well, I guess at Michele Bischof Holistic Fitness, you'll find me on Facebook. I have a business page there, or just Michele Bischof, www.michelebischof.com. I have a website. I'm also on Insta with a different handle. It's I might change this because I need it all to make sense. But,
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I'm on social media. If you look at my name, you'll find me. And I would love to connect. So amazing. So amazing. And that is my mission. That is my goal, is to help as many people find themselves, build their confidence again, and from the inside out.
Okay, final question. Do you actually have purple hair? Is that what I'm seeing? Because I am loving it.
My hair, this is colored.
Yeah, is it like purple or maroon?
Well, it's kind of like
somewhere in there.
Purplish ruddy. Like I don't know the exact color, but I've been for years.
Plum?
I am a brunette, and then I didn't ever color my hair till, I don't know, maybe 12 years ago. And this is the color it's been ever since.
I've always wanted like deep purple hair like that, and then like brighter green eyes. I have green eyes, but I want them to be like, oh my God, they're green. Just because purple and green looks so good. And I don't know, there's something about it where I kind of feel like my online avatar. I'm a gamer. Okay. So I would play night elves.
Awesome.
And I would change their skin to like light purple, their hair to dark purple, green eyes. It's like, I just want to be my avatar.
Awesome.
But I don't want to be built like a body build like a night elf. They're way too skinny. It's not me. I have finally embraced my hips and my body shape.
Yay! Yes, for hips. I have them too.
Do you?
Yes.
Oh, great. And Susan, yay for hips! I'm in the chat. Hips don't lie. There we go.
That's awesome.
It has been so much fun.
I guess I know we have to end this, but I just want to say, like, your health is your wealth. Your health is your wealth. I do have a Facebook group with that, if anyone wants to come in and join that, where we give out all the tips and things and, resources, tools. I do a lot of mindset stuff, body stuff, food stuff, like energy stuff. Like, it's so true though. Movement is a gift. Your health is your wealth, and just be you,
So much fun.
So awesome.
Well, I appreciate you being here with us. Our guest is backstage now, so I guess I'll make her come up. I'm just picking on you, Allison. Thank you so much, Michele, and we hope to see you again soon. Bye.
Bye.
Are you ready, Allison? Thumbs up in the background. Okay, great. It's like, I want to make sure that we can see you, we can hear you, that you're not like, 1 second, I need to go use the bathroom. It's all good. It's all good. So welcome to the stage, Allison. I had the lovely time of being a boot camp coach with you for the last experts boot camp. So I was like, I didn't know you a whole lot beforehand. Having that experience was just, it's great because with Blue Talks, we get to know some of the other speakers and authors and coaches and podcasters on a more personal level. And every time we have a conversation with each other, we get to learn more and more and deepen it. So I have been playing with a fun question, which I'm going to ask you, and I can't remember if I sent it to you beforehand. Really what it is I want to know what 3 words you would just love other people to describe you as.
3 words.
Mm-hmm. Any 3 words.
Alive.
Oh, that's a great one.
Authentic
Okay.
and free.
Ooh. See, I love how each person has different words.
Yeah.
Because like we all have our stories in behind. So why would you love to be referred to as alive and free and authentic? What does that mean for you?
I think for me, first of all, nice to see you both.
Yes.
I think for me, I've had my own mental health journey and have had a period where I was on mental health medications and have now been free of them for 4 years. And so
Good.
for me, it's kind of the epitome. Yeah, doing amazing.
Okay.
Yeah. Things are
Okay,
really
good.
Yeah.
Double checking.
I've focused on a whole bunch of holistic things. And so I think for me, it's like the idea of actually flourishing, right? So if I think of the science of flourishing and this feeling, I think of feeling fully alive, feeling authentic, like my inner wild child, like some of those things, right? Like vitality, I guess.
Yes.
And it's
You're
important because I
feisty.
didn't always feel that way.
We were talking about eyes earlier, and your eyes are much different than Michelle's. You have like very feisty eyes. Like, I want to pounce you kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a fun, playful way.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this. So then you brought up we're gonna go here, okay? So you brought up the fact that you were on medication and I was doing this, right?
Yeah.
Because I wanted to make sure that this was right for you, that this did feel good for you, that you have progressed since then. Can you speak about your journey of that?
Yeah.
Just a little more?
Yeah, and it's interesting.
Okay.
My Blue Talks haven't come out yet, but both of my Blue Talks from Harvard and MIT are about this journey, kind of my journey with mental health, reclaiming, kind of having a near crash, a near overdose, and then reclaiming my life, going to Uganda after and reclaiming my life. So I think I was in my 20s prescribed thing after thing. There's a lot of mental health in my family, mental health illness. And was diagnosed a million different ways, right? Anxiety, depression, bipolar depression, handed pill after pill. And as medications have their purpose, if you need, they treat symptoms and they can help you get through a really hard time. Like I would never tell anyone not to do that. I needed them for a period of time.
Yes.
But as we know, none of them actually solve the mental illness. None of them cure depression or cure anxiety or cure. So unless you deal with all of the other underlying root cause things, you don't ever necessarily get better, right? So for me, I have also had 5 concussions. And so in targeting the debilitating headaches for the concussions, because I just kept getting painkillers and then anti-nauseants for the headaches. And on top of the mental health meds I was on, I kind of took it into my own hands. I'm like, this is nutty. Like, I need to do something different. So I went on like a real path of into nutrition, right? Changing my whole diet. And through doing that, not only did I get so much more energy, I got rid of my headaches for the most part, and my mental health meds were now over-drugging me. Like I had increased the efficacy of them to the point where I ended up starting to be able to go off of them, right? And so that became kind of my path of the science of how do you actually flourish? If pharmaceuticals are a tool, how do you address some of the other things that, I think there's times where they're handing out meds where lifestyle factors or nutrient deficiencies could be addressed, right? And instead of just handing a pill, which doesn't get you past that. So that's why it's kind of a passionate thing for me. And so I've been on a journey for the last 10 years to, become really knowledgeable in that field.
Oh, I love your share, because that's exactly what I wanted to highlight, is that they're right for people in a moment. And as long as you see how that looks in your life and how you want it to look in your future life, it's different for everyone. So let's dive a little bit deeper. I know that there's a story here, but first I want to ask you about your message. What is it that you really need people to understand? And then we'll dive into why.
Yeah, I think, I ended up hearing the end of Michelle's message and it resonates a little bit, right? That health is wealth message.
Yeah. Put that up again.
In order to, I think in order to feel fully alive, right, we need to tackle these kind of holistic things. And health, whether it is your physical health or your mental wellness, those things are so interconnected, and they are so pivotal to being able to flourish, right? It is near impossible to flourish if you don't have your health.
Oh, that was one of the things that I started with in my business. I used to do architecture professionally, but then when I started my own business, I was like, what am I going to do? Architecture? And then it felt like this oxymoron of what I called the bed mass of wellness. So it was all of these, it was a formula, and it was basically saying, you know, diet and exercise are important, but they're two of the last things that we need to focus on, because there's all of this internal work that has to happen first that most of the time we're not having that conversation about. And so then it was like, why am I talking about this and this when I'm not connecting the two? All of the patterns we go through.
4 pillars. So mind, body, environment, community. Exactly. Right. And so within those 4 pillars, right, is how I think you can get to optimal well-being.
So mind, body, spirit, environment. I was doing pens for pillars today, so we're just going to go with it.
And it was community instead of spirit, but
community.
It's in the mind category.
I like that.
Yeah.
No, I like that better. Yeah. So then, like, you did talk about your depression. Can you tell us more about, like, what is it that you do specifically?
Yeah.
We'll start there.
Yeah, so actually I have a similar background to you. I was a structural engineer, professional engineer, turned management consultant. So that's what I've done. I've kind of helped high impact energy companies. I did a master's in sustainability. So I've been doing that for the last most of my career. But I experienced burnout severely twice in these industries. And so I really wanted to start changing the conversation. I started mentoring and coaching people within that space. To kind of help, you know, like women who were also in these very male-dominated industries and people who weren't doing as well. And so it was kind of a natural thing where I'm like, we need healthier workplaces. And all of these overachievers, which that was me, right? The work to the 4 hours of sleep and 80+ hour work weeks was a badge of honor. And I was like, this is not, and my health started to suffer once I had my 5th concussion. And then the burnout was so severe that I was like, this is not like how I want to live. Things have to kind of change here. And so that was kind of the path. So, starting to build the other company, Evolving Equilibrium, which is going to focus on holistic health and well-being. So metabolic health and mental health. I've been building that for about 4 years, but in the meantime, I launched another company that was still doing management consulting. So helping companies, but it was a very, very different approach, right? So 40-hour work weeks and on my own terms and time for work-life balance and just prioritizing the things. And so that's allowed me to help, you know, do all the education and research related to the new company, because it's obviously very different from my background. Other than I am my avatar, like I've lived it, but so that's kind of, it was a twisty journey, but I'm getting ready to launch the new company in either July or August this year. So we're just putting all the finishing touches, and that's what I've started speaking about. That's what I've started kind of sharing about. I just submitted 2 book chapters for the Blue Talks book. So those
Which
are
ones?
The new company. One is the James Redfield book.
Okay,
and I can't remember what the actual other one was.
There was Marie Diamond and Ken Honda, and then Neil Donald Walsh.
Do you know what? I don't
There's
even think
another
Corey's
one.
told me yet. I think he just is like, hey,
okay.
I think he's like, hey, well, we can get you in another. I'm doing his whole speaking training and everything. Yeah, I did it. I got it at not this boot camp that we coached at, but the one before. So so I'm planning to kind of write my own book eventually and start sharing. Like, I would love to be able to speak about, you know, mental wellness and resilience and how to, you know, help people. Like, we all have the innate capacity to heal ourselves. Right. I want to empower people to be able to not wait for the doctor to cure you, not wait for you. Like, you know, doctors have their time and place when we need them, but there's so much that we can do for ourselves, right? To heal.
Yeah. That's why I like to use the word team. I have a health team, and that could be my doctor, my naturopath, my chiropractor, my acupuncturist, my Akashic Records. Like
Yeah.
I just started taking Akashic Records training with Emily. I'm only on module 1. Like all of these different things can be a part of our team.
Yeah.
And so I love this idea of community as one of your pillars. See, I remembered. Because it is a community. And we grow more with community. Yeah.
And community also means, right, the support network of like professionals that you might need, right? A health team. And then also your support network, whether it's community, like, you know, meeting all the other coaches and starting to connect, or meeting friends, family, like all those other communities that help with feeling connected and belonging.
So let's talk about the ways that you love to share your message. You did say that you were in a couple of the Blue Talks books. Do you like to write? Is that something that comes natural to you?
You know, it's all kind of new to me. The whole speaking, writing, podcasting, I'm planning to do it all, but it's not my typical wheelhouse. Like I journal. So like I write in that I journal. And so that part of it comes naturally. Like, sharing my story and that piece was, but the public speaking aspect and the like thinking of writing an entire book, or it's not something that I ever thought I would do. It's not something I'd ever planned to do, but I do find the more, like the first time I spoke on stage, it was like, I was so nervous, and, the second time definitely got a little easier. And so I can see the power in being able to share a message through all these different avenues. It seems to resonate with people.
Now, you mentioned that you journaled. Did that experience of journaling help you be able to write your book?
It did. Yeah, it for sure did. Because the first chapter that I put in is about my mental health journey and kind of how I went to Africa to heal. And so a lot of that stuff I had in journals, or parts of it in journals, or so in initially pulling it together, like I'm still kind of working through refining all the message and everything, but I had a lot of that stuff ready. So that piece of it was easy. And then the other piece, like the second chapter, I talk a lot about coping strategies. I've had a lot of active trauma over the last couple of years. And so I talk about kind of coping strategies while dealing with live trauma. So that part was actually not that hard to write for me because I've lived so much of it. So just talking about, like, some of it I had journaled, but some of it's like I go for mindful walks with my dog when I'm overwhelmed, or I go for, like, some of it is the things that I do regularly. So it was pretty easy.
Go ahead, Susan.
It was just easy to write about.
Well, and I wanted to throw something in, and I'm like, I'm gonna just speak, and I'm gonna cut Laura off, and she saw
That's
that.
All good.
She's sensing that. But I love so much, and I want to backpedal a little bit on something that you said. But I love so much how your journey and your management counseling, and then going into this evolving equilibrium, which I love the name of that, by the way. It goes back to that whole putting a Band-Aid on the mental health. It's like, it's not just, I'm going to take this pill and I'm going to be better.
Yeah.
It's everything else that goes along with that. And I love that it all tying into your journey. But something I want to backpedal on is, you said you went to Africa to heal.
Yeah.
Why Africa? And how did that help you?
I think for me, I was always one of those people that was very, like, a little bit wild child, travel, backpack everywhere, do the, like, not the typical norm person, very brave, very, like, kind of fearless. And when I went through, like, a pretty big mental health crisis at 30 and nearly overdosed, I was self-medicating on top of trying to work through what meds worked. I hit rock bottom, and it took like about a year later after that. I was stabilized on meds, but I still didn't feel alive. Like I was starting to have moments of joy. I was living with my sister and 1-year-old niece. So like being around a small child like that, like amazing. So I was having, like, joy was creeping in, but it was not how I was not thriving. So I was like, I need to do something drastic. I got to do something that just kind of like rocks me to the core and do something. And so I booked a trip by myself to Uganda. I ended up booking, I got a little bit nervous about it and was a bit of overachieving. I'm like, I need to maybe turn this into something, or make this for something. So I booked a photojournalism seminar at the start of it with my favorite humanitarian photographers, Zariah Miller. And so that would kind of start the trip. We were going to do a story around women's issues in Uganda. And but I lost all of my meds on the way on the plane ride over. I actually lost all of my meds. I had like my antibiotics, the mental health meds, everything in a thing in my carry-on, and it fell off on the plane. So it would take me 13 days in Uganda to get it. But in the meantime, I had to do this whole photojournalism seminar with a person that I didn't know, but I really respected, and kind of take it day by day. I was starting to go through withdrawals. They didn't have my meds over there. But we were also just seeing these like horrific, like heart-wrenching things, right? Like women and children. We were doing work in the slums, 2 of the slums there. And you know, women and children like exposed to violence and to sexual exploitation and like starvation. And like, so like, I think it was like my resilience started to build. It's like, okay, if you can't like figure out how to just go day by day without your meds and like with all the privilege and all the things and all the strength that you have, like, how are these girls going to do it? How are these people going to, like, kids going to do it? I ended up volunteering too with a woman named Robina who had started a nonprofit called Set Her Free Uganda, and it was empowering young girls out of the sex trade. And so again, it was just like, okay, like you gotta pull it together, right? And so through that experience, I was there for about 6 weeks, and I eventually did get my meds, but I already the resilience and the purpose to kind of start doing something more aligned with helping people and you know, just I think the gratitude for like, okay, you have a lot of good things and a lot of resources, like, so like if you got to start trying to figure this out, right? So I think it was the biggest mindset shift for me and kind of really starting to heal.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I have so much I want to say, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to say you didn't lose your meds. They were taken from you to help you learn and grow. And I think that that's so key in your message of, you know, it's not just this one pill that's going to make us feel better.
Totally.
Because if you had all your meds, how would that have looked differently? And how would you not have seen and appreciated things that you actually saw and appreciated? So that's
so true, Susan. Like it ended up being losing the meds ended up being a blessing in disguise for sure.
Yeah. Wow.
It just makes me think of all the other times in our lives where we're like, no, and it feels like the world is crashing, only for it to be this beautiful destruction that leads to this magical gift that we never would have thought of.
Yeah.
I like to joke that right now I'm homeless. And by homeless, I mean I am living in somebody else's house until next week. And then I am with my mom for 2 months. And then I will be moving again. Like it's craziness. And it feels awkward at the moment, but I know it's this beautiful destruction that leads to this magical gift.
Yeah. And I didn't feel that way the day I arrived in Uganda.
Oh no!
Tell this photographer. So here's the deal. I may lose my mind over the next like little bit, and here we are. But he was amazing about it. So.
Aww. So where did you? Okay, I'm trying to deal with the light, and it's not really working. Where did you learn about this photographer that you said that you respected so much?
I don't know how I first learned about him. I think I thought about doing, I've done a lot of volunteer work over the years, and I've done a lot of backpacking in different places. And so I've been in a lot of, you know, poor countries, and I've been in, it's one of those things where, and I do a lot of photography. So it's one of those things that I was always like, you know, in a different life, I could have been a humanitarian photographer or done something like that.
I could see that.
Yeah. So I think it's something I would have loved. So he was someone I just started to follow, that he shares a lot of really important stories. He's worked at the Red Cross. He's been embedded in the US military. He does all of these now photojournalism projects, right? Where he takes people and teaches them kind of how to make connections and how to share light on people's stories. And so it's just something, I started following him and his work. And so it was such a great experience, like working with him.
Does he also do events in Canada?
I do not know. He's American and lives in that. We should actually look into
I was
that
like,
now.
yeah,
Yeah.
because we had mentioned, just so everybody watching knows, behind the scenes, we took our boot camp coaches and we're like, let's have a collaboration call. We want to have our community, and one of the pillars earlier, to really collaborate with each other. And one of these ideas was, just as we're saying, to kind of put ourselves in these moments that we fear, like tandem skydiving and firewalking, and for some of us, boudoir photos, like putting us into these moments of just feeling uncomfortable, facing our fears, building this courage and resilience within us so that we can be these people that we want to be. We can embody that more now than the future version of us. So I had asked you, and I had asked Susan to help be a part of this planning and to kind of have it all around the mental health.
Yeah.
So I like how it's kind of coming together.
Yeah, it's so exciting.
It's like, I wonder. So everybody watching, same thing. If you have crazy cool ideas, let us know. If it connects with somebody here, let us know. Yeah.
Yeah, and if not him, I probably have. I grew up in Edmonton, so I can find some other resources or photographers and all that there as well. So I'm sure we can come up with some ideas.
Look, I just put it out into the public world, and now I have to do it.
Yeah,
oh my God. Okay.
You said it now.
Oh, I know. So you said that you're getting into writing and you're getting into speaking. Have you ever been on the stage before your last speaking gig with Blue Dogs?
No, not in that capacity. So I've stood at the front of a room. Like I did I've done a lot of coaching and training as it relates to technical topics in my past job. So in management consulting, right, we would work on a project with a client and we were also training some of their teams in the skills to maybe take it over, take it further. So put me in a boardroom, like sitting with all the execs or in front of a bunch of, managers, like standing at the front of the room, no problem. But I have never gotten up on a stage and also even talking about my own mental health journey, like one-on-one to people. It's something I've shared a lot of over the years when people are struggling or whatnot, but I've never actually got up on a stage in front of people and shared, a vulnerable story like that. So it's definitely
was it just the vulnerable piece that had you uncomfortable? If you already had the speaking experience?
Yeah, I guess or there's something about, like I guess that all the technical things, you're an expert in, all the things, you've done the research, so with sharing something technical, there's like a piece of you that's kind of removed from that, I guess. Sharing a story about myself and healing and all of a sudden feels a little bit more uncomfortable. And it's not because I'm afraid of people hearing the story, or it was just standing up there, like saying it, is.
It's the feeling of being exposed, which is also exposure. You're afraid of being seen, which is also your visibility. It's like this two ends of the same stick.
Yeah. When it's not something that I don't do a ton of reels or lives or anything on social media, but I'm going to for the new company.
Oh, are you?
Right? So that's the plan. Yeah. Like the more visible, the more people that I can help and the more people that can be impacted. Right. And so starting to speak was part of like, okay, you're going to have to get over that and start getting comfortable with this. And then the first video I watched of myself, I was like, oh, like you just cringe a little bit and pick apart the whole thing. But
I probably spent 5 years ignoring all of the videos that I create. I was like, no, just
look at
no. And now I'm to the point where I do watch my own stuff because now I want to pull out clips and quotes. But at first, there was no way I could have listened to it.
I haven't watched my second one yet, but I just got it. It's in my inbox. So that'll be,
Oh, yes. So then you were talking about writing and you were talking about speaking. Do you also do podcasting?
I do not, but I'm planning to eventually launch a podcast. That'll probably be like a year and a half down the road. Going to launch it with a friend of mine who is a registered nurse, and she's running a adolescent addictions clinic right now here in Calgary. And so much experience in the mental health space, and especially dealing with families and dealing with youth. So I bring a lot more experience maybe working with the kind of high achiever types right?
Yeah.
And she brings that, it kind of rounds out. So we're going to do that. And then my plan is to pitch to get on some other people's podcasts, starting once I'm going to launch my actual company in July, and then I'm going to do it. Because I found that I was creating a bit too much momentum without just some of the stuff just launched. Like I need to logo in my branding and just get it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it just needs to be there.
Yeah. That's kind of where I'm stuck. It's like I have closed my corporation, so I don't have to deal with any of the paperwork and all of that kind of stuff. It's just go away. It's old energy, and it's registered under architecture. I was like, no, I'm done. This is a new me. I started a solo business on my own, so now I'm rebranding, and it's that same problem. It's like I'm over here, but I don't have the tools set up here that I'm just kind of tripping over myself.
Yeah. And that's why I'm taking a bit of time after this week, after the book chapters. I'm actually going to spend the next month just slowing down, finishing a couple of my designations that I was, associated with it, getting the logos, the branding, the social media things actually launched, the systems in place.
Yes.
All of that stuff, so that when I launch, it's a little bit smoother, because trying to do it all on the side when all the systems and the processes and all that is, as you know, is not that efficient.
So then this is technically being a guest on a podcast. Do you like being so do you like being a guest? Are you going to do more guesting? Because I don't host my own podcast, and I don't think that I will, because it's too much work, but I love being a guest.
This is my actual way that I prefer speaking. When somebody, like, it feels more one-on-one, right? Somebody asks me questions, the conversation evolves. Like, it's not me getting up in front and talking for 20 minutes, right? It's a dialogue. So this is the way that I've always been more comfortable talking anyway. So I love it. This is a great first experience. So
But this is also more natural for the audience too, is they like to feel like they're a part of the conversation. That I'm not like, I'm going to talk at you all the time. It's like, no, we're getting engaged and involved.
Yeah.
Complete with weird light. I don't know where it's coming from.
Oh yeah, it's great. I thought it was me coming in here too, but
no, and you know, it's wonderful because Allison, you've got this, it's almost like an angelic little halo on, and it's beautiful. And it's like it's feeding your plants, and it's like, where's my halo, right? Like, how do I do that? I kind of like where I am. And before we started, I had this thing about, okay, I can't move, otherwise my camera wasn't, in view. And now Laura's got this light thing, and I think so much of this, right? So much of it is energy. Just embrace it, Laura. You look beautiful. But I think
you're glowing. Definitely glowing.
So much of it is energy, and I'm drawn to ask you, what is like evolving equilibrium? Explain to me what somebody would gain from working with you. Like what is sort of that end result? What do you help people with?
Yeah. So I think it would be reclaiming energy. Maybe I'll start with like what equilibrium means to me. It's a state of balance with opposing internal and external forces. So if you think of mind and body, my first two pillars being the internal forces, the things you can kind of do for yourself and the things you can control, versus the community and the environment, are the things that we have to find a way to live in harmony with, right? So with other people and in our connection with the planet, and and that's where like things like our exposure to toxic chemicals and their role on health and some of those things. And the idea of evolving is that you don't, there's been a lot of mental health, and I've had a lot of trauma. I lost a best friend in the last year to cancer. My dad has cancer. There's been a lot of stuff. So the idea that you don't just get to equilibrium, get to a state of balance, and then stay there forever, right? There's all these external things that continue to pop up. And so the idea of evolving or changing, right, is continually like having the tools to kind of bring yourself back to that place. Mm-hmm. So if I think of, what someone would achieve, it would be going from just surviving, maybe like kind of on the verge of burnout, overwhelm, maybe anxiety, depression, to actually thriving and flourishing, like feeling fully alive in your life, reclaiming your energy, right? In the industries that I've worked in, just seeing how many people are like on the verge of burnout or burning out or taking health leaves, right? So getting back to that point where you actually have energy for the things that matter, the things that you want to show up in your life for. And I guess a sense of peace or calm or, you know, aligned purpose. That are you living kind of for your authentic self, right? And what does that even look like? I was fortunate when I left a big four management consulting firm. That was the last time before I started working for myself. I had a partner sit down with me and she's like, I will help you to kind of keep, you know, climbing the corporate ladder here if you want it, but I don't think you do. She's like, I ultimately don't think this is what you want to do. And so she had me do a values exercise, right? Like sit down and look at what are your top values. And in going through that, I realized I wasn't actually living any of those values at work or in my home life as a result of the job, right? And so I think for a lot of people, they're kind of stuck in the rat race or stuck in overachieving and stuck in and maybe don't see a different path. But my kind of superpower in everything I've done in consulting is solving problems. Like I've done tons of different projects and worked with tons of different people. And so it's finding ways for people to kind of figure out what their own vitality and their own version of fully alive feels like.
Right. Yeah. And that whole idea of, you know, that one, going back to your 3 words, right? That authenticity and that being alive and being free and that idea of what it is to be free. And, you know, yesterday, some of the speakers were talking and the whole idea came up about we can only create so much of what we want, right? And one of my messages, create the life you truly want to experience, because my life was passing me by. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm not achieving what I truly want, but then I have to think about what I want and how do I want to create that?
Yeah.
But understanding, and you spoke so beautifully to this, understanding that the environment and the community, you just have to run with and accept it and figure out how that works into your environment and into that, what you're creating for yourself.
Well, and I think the one thing that, you know, when you start to think about completely switching careers or completely switching your life or doing, you know, it seems very daunting at the start. You're like, I'm going to now become a functional nutritionist and metabolic balance coach and trauma coach. And like, what, who's going to, you know, but as you start to carve out and start to head in the direction that is more in alignment, it's amazing all of the different opportunities and people, like, you know, just what Laura was mentioning earlier about this coaches boot camp, meeting all of those other coaches and starting to talk about this project that Laura came up with for next year, or just connecting with some of these people that are like-minded. Some of that I think starts to show up in your life once you're starting to live more in alignment, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is why it's scary. Because I'm like, oh, the more aligned I am, the faster I go. And I don't know, I'm used to 50 cc's gamer. So Mario Kart. Yeah. I want to just kind of putt along. And instead I'm 4 times the speed. No, got to get used to it. Slowly ramp ourselves up.
Yeah.
That way we don't hit a wall.
Yeah.
but also at the same time, and I love, because that's all I do when I play Mario Kart is hit walls. But also appreciate of where we're at, right? And appreciate that we can only go in a certain speed. Like one of the things that came up at the boot camp was when you are ready, your instructor will appear. The mentor will appear. And I'm like, okay, all of these people are appearing at the wrong time for me back when I started in 2017. All these people are appearing. Oh my God, and oh my God, and oh my God. And I learned so much, but I couldn't implement anything.
Right.
And now it's, okay, now it's time to implement. And you don't need to learn anything more. You've got the knowledge. You just need to implement, right? So recognizing that. So I see that as that evolving equilibrium. Like I've just made my own definition, but I think it just aligns with what you're doing. Yeah, that's beautiful. Brilliant.
Well, and that's so in alignment with what has happened with me with launching this company, Susan. Like I had quit the other job in corporate to launch this company 4 years ago, but I had a former partner who went through a very challenging path with mental health. I had mental health and cancer in my family. I had a best friend that went through a really horrific cancer journey. And so as I was learning all this education, the same thing, meeting all the right people and I just did not have the capacity to launch and do it well. And so I had to give myself a lot of grace about that because it just wasn't the time. It was not the right time. And I feel like when I launch, right, none of that education and all the stuff I learned and all the people goes away, right? I've just built on that. And now is the time that I was obviously always meant to launch.
Right.
I feel the same thing. Like when I first met Corey, it was there, I think it was either 2014 or 2016. And all I did was I sat in the front row and I'm being me, right? I'm like visually, like the nonverbal communication. He comes up to me afterwards. That's part of my secret sauce. And he was like, I loved how you showed up. And he was like, I want to be your mentor. Like, I want to take you under my wing and just teach you all of this. So then I bought into a speaking program years ago. Before all of the crap happened, I started it. I didn't even finish it. But then again, it's like I wasn't in the headspace to use it or to even finish it. Yeah. And then years later, that's when I got back into it. That's when I started to use it this much. Then life happened again. So there's always this building, as you said, of our emotional selves, our spiritual selves, our physical selves to be able to handle this new growth. And it's going to come up where these little spots are that you're missing.
Yeah.
Where the little holes are. You just deal with it as it comes.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. I haven't started any of his actual speaker training of the course either. And yet I've spoken twice now. I was like, the opportunity came up and I'm like, well, we're just going to wing this. And then, you kind of see the video and you're like, okay, that can improve. So I gave the same talk the next time. Haven't seen if that's an improvement or not. We'll see. And then I'm like, okay, now we can once I have a bit of capacity this summer, I can start actually digging into proper speaker training to learn the things that I probably should have learned before I did the talk.
Well, it's all a journey, right? It's not the only time you're ever going to speak or the only time you're ever going to write. It's always building. So last night I just went to a CAPS meeting, which is like the Canadian version of the National Association of Speakers. I think it's the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. I think that's what it stands for. And so they were talking about podcasting. And it was all new to them. And I'm like, I've been in this world forever. But it was great to just have other people in a community where they understand where they are and can teach me things that I don't know. And then I can come in and help teach them things that they don't know.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful.
Well, and I think of the podcast pitch training that Corey did at the Speakers Bootcamp. I had no idea how I would have I had this idea that I would apply to be on podcasts but until I saw those pitches and kind of got that bit of training on how to pitch, I was like, oh, okay, this is definitely probably not how I would have done it. Very powerful, right? Learning those tools on how to do those things, right? That it's just not in your experience.
And learning at the right time or learning it when you're meant to. You know, that came up for me too, because I was actually at the very first New Media Summit in person, the very first one. And Corey was at the very last one. And so it's like, well, I don't know how to help these people. This is new to me. And I went back in my resources in my brain and I'm like, I got this. I know what they were looking for. I didn't have it at the time because I was in that point where I didn't, right? But I do now. And I can go back through those resources. And I think that's so, that's so key when we go back through Laura's light. Mine's just dull and hers is all over the place. Your light's happening for me too. But I think that it's this whole idea of the right place at the right time for the right reason. And so maybe it was the right reason, or it was the right time, or it was the right place. You were definitely in the right place when you went to Africa. Right?
Yeah.
You lost your pills and that was the right reason because it made you appreciate all this other stuff. And now all of these experiences and all these stories and all of this past you-ness can become a part of your evolving equilibrium.
Yeah. Well, and here's a really cool goosebumps moment. When I spoke at Harvard on the Blue Talk stage, I had posted about it on Facebook, and Uganda was in 2011. So it's been almost 12 years. And I have loosely kept in touch with the woman that had founded Set Her Free. I donate here or there. But I never really did her full story, the photojournalism story, because I was kind of rebuilding my life at that time. And when I posted about it, she wrote me a message on Facebook about the speaking. And I had actually had a picture of her and me with all of these kids in Africa in my Blue Talk presentation. And so I screenshotted it and I sent it to her and I was like, oh my God, okay, we have to reconnect. And since I've actually become their Canadian ambassador. So I haven't really taken off on what that.
I do have goosebumps.
Goosebumps, right? Like it was like I connected with her at the right time at the time I'm going to have a platform, right, where I can actually help her. And so
yeah, and I think that's a key thing too for everybody that's out there, because there's goosies going all along.
Yes.
But if we wait for the right time, right? If you had waited, and if you and I tell people this all the time about my journey, if I had waited to hire a coach or hire a mentor when I was ready and I had a true message to share, I wouldn't have learned everything I was meant to learn when I did learn it, right? Totally. And for you, if you had waited, well, I'm going to wait until July when everything's all launched. Then I'm going to do my Blue Talks. Yeah. Then I'm going to write my book. And then these experiences and these things and that lady may not have seen you and the timing wouldn't have been right. And so I just love that so much.
Yeah. And I probably would have never launched. I am such a perfectionist. I think I would have been building this company for the next 10 years and it would have been perfect, but I would have never actually helped people because it would never actually have been launched. Something about creating momentum makes you play a little catch up where you're like, okay, well, my logos and nobody cares what my pillar icons look like or my logos except for me, pretty much. Like, let's just get something. They can always be upgraded and changed, and let's get something going that is focused on the people that I want to help, not what color theme I've chosen.
Exactly.
My mentor
put it out to the world, right? You've already said July, so July it is. It's been said here on Amplify your message.
Too late now. Yeah.
One of my mentors said to me, he's like, "You're trying to help people, right?" I'm like, "Right." He's like, "The more perfectionist you are, the more you're delaying helping people. Every minute and every moment that you decide to just edit something, to change something, to wait, is another moment that you're condemning them to their pain that you share with them." And I was like, "Oh my God." He's like, "Get it done and ship it." So that I just keep saying in my head, get it done and ship it, get it done and ship it, get it done and ship it. You can always edit later, pretend life is a beta test, just get it done and ship it.
So nobody cares about your own perfection, right?
No,
I love that condemning them. What was it? Condemning them to their pain?
I'm paraphrasing. I'm using my own words, but that's basically what he said to me. It's like, oh my God. Yeah. Condemning them to pain. So we are like a minute past our time. That's fine. Okay. I enjoyed this. I really did. But Allison, how do we find you? What is your favorite way to connect?
So I've already set up the Instagram for my company. It's just at Evolving Equilibrium. Or you can connect with me on Facebook or LinkedIn, Allison Mones, Allison Mones. And I'm going to be launching in July and then starting to share lots of valuable tips and tricks and all that stuff. So yeah, nice. Super excited. And this is so much fun, ladies. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And is there anything that you needed to say before we ended today? Because I always want to give that moment.
I think I would just say, we all have the innate capacity, our bodies and our minds, to heal ourselves. And, sometimes we need the right tools and the support to kind of start that journey. But that is where I want to help, empower other people to become their own advocates for their own lives.
Woo! Okay, thank you so much, Allison. This was lovely. I knew it would be. Okay. It was like all the coaches coming together. Yay. Yeah, it would be lovely.
Nice to see you both.
You too. I'm going to send you to the backstage, and then Susan and I will say goodbye. So, bye, Allison.
Thank you.
Okay, Susan, what is something that you have taken away from today?
Oh, something.
Do share just anything.
So much. And I want to say it's when you show up in the energy of who you are and who you're meant to be, the world around you will show up. Look at my lighting, look at my coloring, look at my focus, right? And I showed up to the energy because how do you not? Everyone had such an amazing energy. And I think it's that inside out. Once you show up as who you're meant to be, the world around you will show up the way it's supposed to. The
biggest takeaway for me today would just be this evolving energy that I'm having. I'm leaning into the fact that I just publicly said that I'm taking Akashic Records training. Woo, that's not something I would normally say. And the fact that there is struggle right now. I do cry on this show sometimes. It's because I really care and I really want to show you all sides of me, not just my bubbly side. And so today it was a lot of that. Yeah, there's those moments, which it's not quite the moment of wanting to throw up, but you get those butterflies and that the tension in your throat. It's like from here to here. And I'm going to take some me time. I haven't been outside in like 3 days. So I'm going to, during the sunlight. So I'm going to go outside and just let the sun, since it wants in so badly, to shine on my face. But this has been day 3 of Blue Talk's Amplify Your Message. And I was so happy, Susan, that you were joining me as my co-host today. It was lovely and I appreciated it. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you so much. And it's just a wonderful experience and, an opportunity to hear a story. And we both love stories so much and we both help people with their stories in different ways. And it's just so amazing. Someone's story comes into me and it evolves into something more. And then I'm able to share that back to them. And it's just magical.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So then tomorrow, we're actually starting a little bit later tomorrow. This week isn't completely full and I'm glad because I'm exhausted, but I'm getting better. So tomorrow we're starting 45 minutes later. So it's 11:45 my time, Atlantic time. Yes, there's an hour later than Eastern in the United States, which is 10:45 a.m. Eastern. Do your calculations. I don't know all of them. That's okay.
8:45 Mountain.
Yeah, there you go. So same bat channel, all the Facebook, the LinkedIn, the YouTube. It's all so good. Bring your questions. I didn't quite cover the whole what would be crazy cool for you to do to share your message today, but I think I want to come back to the tangibles, the practicing together. So tomorrow I'm going to kind of bring out some of those little pieces of tell me about your work, but what is something that we can do together? I like that. I like that from the last, like the one that we did 2 months ago, we had a day where we did that and it was really fun. We get to really understand what people do. So let's bring that back in tomorrow, have a little practice with all of our practitioners and our experts, and we'll have some fun that way. Much love, everyone, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye. And then we dance and we sing on the way out. We go end broadcast. And we go do 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 do.